Thank you. We're going to go to proclamations, and with that, our first proclamation is for Hispanic Heritage Month, and this will be presented Ileana. And I will read it in English, and then Ileana will read it again in Spanish, and then I believe she has more to say. The Petaluma Proclamation for Hispanic Heritage Month. Whereas the Hispanic Heritage Month, histories, cultures, and contributions of American citizens whose ancestors came from Mexico and South America. Whereas the city of Petaluma is committed to continue building a welcoming and neighborly community, diversity, and fostering equity for every resident. And whereas more than 21% of the city of Petaluma's population has identified as Hispanic or Latin American, and Spanish is the second most spoken language in Petaluma behind English. Most of the people in the United States, more than 60 million people in the United States identify as Hispanic American, 18% of the population nationwide.
All right, next speaker and last speaker is Susan Kirk. Susan, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Thank you. Good evening, City Council. I'd like to share just a few pieces of information this evening. I attend a lot of the city's public meetings, probably almost all of them. And I'm sure you understand with your schedule how time-consuming these meetings are. I wanted to acknowledge 3 people who attend most of the meetings that I attend and usually provide really useful and beneficial information. Maura Sullivan, Tara Navade, and the gentleman who just spoke, Mr. John Hanania. Mr. Hanania has many years of experience, especially related to our public safety function here in Petaluma. And in listening to his comments, I have verified information that he has presented to you. And I understand that you may not like Mr. Hanania's delivery, but the delivery and the information provided in his public comments are valid and are beneficial to us for self-examination for the leadership that we want here in the city. So to say thank you to these 3 individuals and to many other people who attend so many meetings and give so much time to help our city. Lastly, I'd like to suggest that community members go by the Paula Lane open space property and look at the roadway that has been installed along the entire Paula Lane frontage and habitat. It has caused serious damage to the property. The American badger has been displaced from the property, and people are very upset because the open space aesthetic enjoyed so much by members of the public going by the property to sit on the Sunset View bench has also been very damaged. And in terms of being proactive for the 2 organizations I represent, I would like to share with the council that the Madrone Audubon Society will be submitting a resolution to the city within the next 10 days to 2 weeks to propose a pathway to prevent further damage and to support the city in relief of liability and responsibility, and prepare a pathway so that this amenity and this very special open space property can be saved again, and the members of the community can enjoy what was supposed to be enjoyed, and the wildlife can return through a reversal and restoration of what's occurred. So I'll appreciate your being open-minded and anticipate providing that to you to open a discussion. Thank you.
All right, and that is our last comment, so I will turn it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And with that, we'll close general public comment at this time, and we will move on to council comment. And I will start with Council Member McDonald.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I just want to note that we again have quite a number of people in the House. We have over 22 folks from the public, and it's always good to have the public see what's going on at the council level. Also, it's been pointed out to me that at last week's council meeting, I announced the wrong date for the Know Before You Grow Forum, that it's this coming Wednesday at September 22nd at 7 p.m. I apologize to all those great volunteers who put together such great programs and administer personally, who is the lead on this forum, which, as you know, is all about transit-oriented development, getting the housing we need without the traffic and climate impacts that we can't have. Moving to my committee assignments on the continuum of care, the strategic plan committee has moved again, and the discussions of home key programs are continuing. And home key is where hotels or apartments can be bought for the homeless in our community and funded by these state programs. And the county's working with nearly every city in the county. Almost all have projects they're submitting. And there's an application deadline, but the county says that as soon as the projects, they will be approved as soon as they can get me under this, rather than waiting for the deadline. So that's a sign of how important it is that we move forward with these housing plans. And also from that group, we learned that there's definitive plans for a point in time count of the homeless this coming year, which has been missed because of COVID the past year. Also to note, there's a wonderful workshop by students and staff at Sonoma State. It's called Rising Waters, Water Qualities, and Homelessness. It's sponsored by all the cities along the Russian River and the North Coast Water Quality Board. It's this Friday, September 24th, 3 to 5. Google Rising Water, Sonoma State, and you'll find the link. Thank you very much, Madam.
Thank you. And we'll go on to Councilmember Healy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So no liaison reports tonight, and thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Brian Barnacle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We had a Music Parks and Rec meeting last week. We had a presentation on the Paul Lane open space, and it was a nice presentation. In general, the city's moving forward with its plans. The concerning part was that we haven't seen the American badger, and so we're going to put some game cameras out to try and capture the badger back before really ramping things up in terms of activity, and making sure that we're really cognizant of how the projects are impacting the badger habitat. We also had a conversation about the skate park, and in particular signage at the skate park, hours for the skate park, and how to maintain etiquette and enforcement and things like that. So there's been some issues with the skate park. Finally, I wanted to make a comment about how important it is as we move forward with transportation projects in particular, but really any kind of change to our environment, how important education is. We've sent out notices to the neighbors about the potential changes to Rainier in moving from 2 lanes to 1 and adding a shared turn lane and a protected bike lane. We've put it on the city's Facebook page, on the PPD put it on their page, and the lack of education around it about why we're doing it has, from my observations and reading the comments, resulted in significant pushback and questioning. And for the PBAC, Kevin, Councilmember McDonald, please, make sure that the messaging on how we do things like this and the rollout is really discussed and a top priority, because there's so many different reasons about why putting a protected bike lane there and a shared turn lane is safe, not just for bikes and peds, but also for cars. And that all that needs to be communicated so that we don't have this type of blowback. I've gotten so many comments of people asking why, and it's super important. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Councilmember King.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had no liaison meetings in the last week to my appointments. On Saturday, I attended the Petaluma Blacks for Community Development annual picnic, and it was extremely well attended. Hundreds, probably, if not, the higher end of the hundreds when I was there for the second half of the picnic. So congratulations to them, and it was a wonderful event. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the Planning Commission did meet last week, and we had a discussion about a zone change proposal along the river to make sure that we're consistent with our general plan. And it's based on the current FEMA maps, and we decided to continue that discussion to a date certain, pending more information. I also, as you know, am your director on the Sonoma County Transportation Authority, and now am on 2 ad hoc committees. And one of those ad hoc committees is called Funding for Climate, and that did meet last week. We had our initial meeting to talk about what some potential funding options are that would actually fund the work of the Regional Climate Protection Agency and flow to our cities so we can address our carbon neutrality goal. So those are my 2 assignments that I had, and question if staff, if I could, getting some questions about recording of the general plan meetings that we had for the 4 quadrants, and didn't see it again on the website, and just wondering whether those are going to be put up and maybe when. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll go to Councilmember Posake.
Thank you, Mayor. I had one meeting. We had a youth commission meeting where we finalized our officers with the selection of Bruno McDera from Petaluma High School as vice president. I've been getting a lot of emails about the schools and council working together. So I had a tour also last week of McDowell School with Joanna Pond, the leader of our school board. And I just want to report that I was blown away by the degree of engagement of teachers and students and staff there. I don't get blown away very often, so I just wanted to report that out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And like Councilmember King, I also attended the Petaluma Blacks for Community Development annual picnic, as did Councilmember Healy and Councilmember Posake. I think the City Council was well represented there, and it was really a significantly larger turnout than it has been in past years. And I want to just say that I really always appreciate seeing the community show up for one another, and they certainly did on Saturday. I want to say that from my liaison report as our representative to the Air District, that the Air District is really taking a very serious approach to equity, looking at equity and addressing that throughout the district. And as part of their efforts, they're going to have three workshops in October, November, and December in our regular meetings. The October meeting will be addressing the whole question of structural racism. The November meeting will be on power sharing with community, which I think will be particularly interesting. And then December will be collaborative problem solving. So I think all of these being looked at from the equity lens, I think will be a real step forward. And I'm sure that their information will be shared with other groups. I also want to say that if we include tomorrow, which has already been declared as a Spare the Air Day, that will be the 9th Spare the Air Day of 2021, which compares to 30 at this time from last year. And while that is really good, we are really just going into our historic fire season. So, I think we have all breathed a sigh of relief that there were no fires in August and so far in September this year, but we're not home safe yet. So that is my Air District presentation, and I just wanted to say that the city is going to be taking part in the Dia de los Muertos experience this year. This is an annual celebration that involves different businesses and community groups, and has a special presentation at the Art Center of different altars where people honor and celebrate the lives of those they have lost. And this year, the city is going to have an altar that will be at the Art Center that will be for anyone in our community who has lost someone to COVID, whether they are someone who lives in Petaluma or one of your friends or relatives. And more information will be coming forward as we put that together, so that how people in our community can come and put something on that altar, so that we can all be part of the community effort in recognizing the loss in that area. So stand by for more. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our city manager, Peggy Flynn, and she will give her remarks.
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to let the community know and council members know that summaries of the neighborhood meetings are going to be posted shortly on the general plan website. That's planpetaluma.org, planpetaluma.org. And that would be under the documents section. So those will be up. and to remind folks to attend the September 29th visioning workshop. Give your input, and information on the event is also available on the general plan website, planpetaluma.org. Get involved. Wanted to make everyone aware that Caltrans put out a traffic advisory for starting at 12:01 a.m. Saturday, September 25th to 6 a.m. Monday, September 27th. As part of the 101 widening project, Caltrans is going to be closing the northbound Highway 101 off-ramp to East Washington Street in Petaluma, again from Saturday, the 25th through 6 a.m. Monday, the 27th. And the detour for northbound traffic will be the Lakeville Highway exit. And more information can be be patient with me with this URL, quickmap, QUICKMAP.dot.ca.gov. And the city will also have that posted on our website and social media if you didn't catch that URL. And then finally, this Sunday at Walnut Park from 11 to 3, the Boy Scout Troop 9 will be hosting their 9th annual Petaluma Community Emergency Preparedness Fair. In attendance will be our fire department, our police department, the Halter Project, which is the large animal fire rescue, and they will be also holding a blood drive. So that is this Sunday at Walnut Park from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for I totally forgot about the Boy Scouts annual emergency event at Walnut Park, so I appreciate you getting that covered. So with that, we will go on to approval of the minutes, and the minutes as submitted have been altered or amended to include the language deny allocation of public art funds and execution of contract with Lampier Gregory for an environmental impact report for a fine balance, and remanding selection of an alternate site for the artwork to the Public Art Committee with direction to staff, and asks, so if there are any changes or people have a problem with that addition. I'm not seeing anyone raise their hand, so the minutes will be approved as corrected. And we will move on to the approval of the proposed agendas. We have an agenda for September 25th, which is a special meeting, and it will be starting at 5 p.m., not 5:30 or 6:30. And we have a revised agenda for the regular meeting of Monday, October 4th. And that includes an item to consider a resolution authorizing the city manager to implement teleconferenced public meetings for all city committees, commissions, and boards pursuant to Assembly Bill 361. So I would like to see if there's a motion, and I see Councilmember Fisher.
Yes, I'd like to make that motion, but just to clarify that our next meeting is Monday, September 27th and not the 25th.
I'm sorry, you got me last time too on that.
And with the addition to the item on October 4th's agenda.
Thank you for the correction and the motion, and Councilmember Posake is seconding it. So with that, we will have a roll call vote.
Barrett,
Yes.
Barnacle,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Posake.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. And with that, we're going on to the consent calendar. We have 2 items on the consent calendar. Do we have any discussion or anybody want to make any, pull any items? Not seeing any hands go up. I will ask our city clerk if she's received any correspondence on the consent calendar items.
Madam Mayor, we received 1 public comment relating to item 3B, which is posted with the agenda packet.
Thank you. And I will ask our moderator to see if there's anybody in the Zoom audience who would like to speak to the consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the public wishing to speak on the consent calendar, please raise your hand now and you'll be called on in turn. And unfortunately, my Zoom interface is not working right. Aaron, can you see, are there any hands raised?
And Madam Mayor, at this point, there are no hands raised.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you both very much. And we will close public comment to the council for a motion. And I see the vice mayor has his hand up.
I'll move the consent calendar items.
Thank you. And Councilmember King.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion by Barnacles, second by King, and we will go to a roll call vote.
Barrett,
Yes.
Barnacle,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Osake.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. And with that, we're on to unfinished business. This is item 4A, resolution appointing individuals to city commissions and committees and setting terms of office for Measure U Oversight Committee. And our city clerk will be the presenter on this.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Give me just a moment to try to share my PowerPoint. Can you see that?
No better.
Yes, it should. Okay. So the item before you tonight is for appointments to outstanding vacancies on the Measure U Oversight Committee, the Senior Advisory Committee, and the Youth Commission, as well as the sit down to get the name of it. Sorry, the Petaluma Museum Association and Heritage Homes and Landmarks of Petaluma, representative to the Historical and Cultural Preservation Committee. The recruitment has been open since the annual appointments were made on June 14th. These were vacancies. There were not enough applications received for the number of vacancies open. So the recruitment has been ongoing, and we have received 2 applications for Measure U Oversight Committee, 1 application for the Senior Advisory Committee, and 1 application for the Youth Commission. So tonight, we'll start with the vote on the Measure U Oversight Committee. And I'm going to ask for an oral vote. We'll go down the council member roll call and ask that each council member please announce whether you would like to vote for either Janice Peter Thompson or Matthew Larrabee. I should pause, Mayor Bear. Are we opening public comment before we take the vote?
Yes, I think that would be a good idea. So do you want me to, would you like me to do that at this point?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you. I will ask, I'll ask our city clerk if she's received any comments on this item.
We did receive 1 public comment prior to the meeting, and I will just note it was from one of the previously appointed members of the Measure U Oversight Committee. His request was to be appointed to the shorter 2-year term. That was from John Brown, and I'll repeat that when we get to that point of the voting.
Okay, thank you. And so I will ask our moderator, we will open public comment on this item and see if there's anyone in the Zoom audience who would like to speak to this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have 1 hand raised already, so I'll share my screen. Members of the public wishing to speak on this item, please raise your hand and you'll be called on in turn. You'll have 3 minutes in which to give your comments. The first hand we have raised is Ben Peters. So Ben, I will allow you to unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Quick question regarding the Measure U committee. I was curious to know if the committee is intended to meet twice annually, meaning 2 times this calendar year per the plain language of the measure, or if the city was intending the committee to meet twice per fiscal year, which I don't think would meet the plain language definition. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments. The next speaker is Susan Kirk. Susan, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Thank you. I was one of the people in the community who was opposed to the 1 cent sales tax, primarily because it had no sunset. There were no specific focused plans for how the funds would be used. And I think that the Oversight Committee composed of citizens is extremely important. So I, in that regard, think that Janice Cater Thompson would be a representative who has her pulse on the community's feelings and needs, including equity. And I really important addition. And I would say that it's a little disappointing, to have not very many people apply to participate in this oversight committee, including appointing the former city manager to the committee, even though he's a private citizen now. I've heard many comments in the community myself about, I guess it's just a misfortune that not that many people stepped forward to really have the oversight for the citizens to be sure that the funds are being dispersed according to the sales tax and the mandate. So I really would like to see our city council, our elected leaders, be very engaged in this process and really have the courage to show leadership to your city manager, city attorney, and functions of the city of Petaluma. For example, what are the top 3 items that really need to be addressed in this city? And another issue for this was, which I think the Oversight Committee will hopefully address, and I'm making that request to whomever is appointed, are the multiple additions of staff that you approved and you did not receive a review, an overview, and really anything except what was requested by the city management for the departments. And I'm sure you know that the staff morale in your departments has never been high and isn't very high now. And so I just think it would be useful to engage at a level of asking for information and reviews to support your employees and to be sure that we're efficiently managing and working in the city and will be using these extra sales tax dollars. Thank you.
All right, and that is the last comment, so I will turn it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. And with that, we'll close public comment on this item and we will bring it back to our city clerk so she can continue her presentation and polling.
Okay, thank you. So again, with the 2 applicants for the Measure U Oversight Committee were Janice Cater Thompson and Matthew Larabier. And I'm going to go down the roll call vote and ask that each member announce whether your vote is for Janice or Matthew. We'll start with Mayor Barrett.
I'm voting for Janice Cater Thompson.
Vice Mayor Barnacle.
Janice Cater Thompson.
Councilmember Fisher.
Janice Cater Thompson.
Councilmember Healy.
Janice Cater Thompson.
Councilmember King.
Matthew Laraber.
Councilmember McDonald.
Matthew Laraber.
Councilmember Kosake.
Janice Cater Thompson.
With a vote of 5-2, Janice Cater Thompson prevails. There was 1 application received for the Senior Advisory Committee from Cheryl Jern, 1 application for a vacancy on the Youth Commission from Harley Christensen, and there was also a nomination from the Petaluma Museum Association and Heritage Homes and Landmarks of Petaluma for their representative position that sits on the Historical and Cultural Preservation Committee from Alice Van Almerman. And if the council doesn't have any objections to the appointments of these 3, I don't think we need to take a vote. So at this time, we will just ask, is there anyone opposed to appointing these 3 individuals?
I'm okay with that process, but I cannot see the whole council. So if the moderator
I can do a roll call as well if it's easier.
It might be easier for the record as well.
Okay, I'll just do a roll call and just let me know if you are opposed. Mayor Barrett.
I am not opposed.
Vice Mayor Barnacle,
Not opposed.
Councilmember Fisher,
Not opposed.
Councilmember Healy,
Not opposed.
Councilmember King,
Not opposed.
Councilmember McDonald,
Not opposed.
Councilmember Postage.
Not opposed.
The next part is a little bit more tricky. The Measure U Oversight Committee. There were 4 individuals previously appointed on June 14th, and Janice Cater appointed tonight. So we have the 5-member body. Because this is a new committee, part of the enabling legislation specifies that 2 members will be appointed to an initial term of 2 years. The other 3 members will get a 4-year term, and this is just for the initial appointments. And then after that, all of the terms are 4 years. That way they're staggered. So we'll do a roll call vote one more time, and I'll ask for 2 names that you would like to be appointed to the shorter 2-year term. Does that make sense? Any questions before I begin?
Yes, actually, this is the mayor. I don't know if how this is being seen, but I did hear from former council member Cater Thompson that if she were appointed this evening, she would be open to taking a shorter term. So if you're going to start off with me on the straw poll, I will suggest John Brown and Janice Cater Thompson because they asked for that.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Barnacle,
Janice Cater Thompson and John Brown for 2-year terms.
Councilmember Fisher,
The same, John Brown and Janice Cater Thompson for 2-year terms.
Councilmember Healy,
The same.
Councilmember King,
Same too, yes.
Councilmember McDonald,
With appreciation for them for doing that, same too.
Councilmember Postage.
Exactly the same.
Okay. Thank you for making that easy. I'm going to clean this up very quickly so you can see what the final decision was here. And this would be the motion that the mayor is going to request next to adopt the resolution. And these are the blanks in the resolution. I just filled it in for you to see.
Okay, there's a couple mistakes, Kendall. You have John Brown for 2025.
Oh.
And Leland Fishman for 2023. They should be reversed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And wait a minute, Alice is only on for, that's a 1-year appointment?
That's the enabling legislation. That representative position fills a 1-year slot.
Okay, thank you. So now the council has in front of you the people who had a straw vote for. So I need a motion for the resolution for these committee and commission appointments. And wait a minute, I see the assistant city manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just before you go ahead and take the vote, I wanted to jump in and quickly respond to Mr. Peters' question that he posed in public comment. Excuse me. So the intent of the committee is really to review the expenditures within Measure U each half-year period or every 6 months. And so that's why the rhythm of the committee was established to meet twice a year to review both a mid-year report and then a year-end report. So because the sales tax was beginning to be collected April 1st of this year, the first results are really looking backward at the end of fiscal year 2021. So once we have gone through our year-end process, the audit process, and finalized all of our numbers for 2021, we felt that that was the right time to then have that first meeting of the Oversight Committee to look back at that first batch of expenditures. Then on a go-forward basis, there would be 2 meetings a year, one roughly November timeframe, and then one roughly in the springtime to look at the half-year point of the expenditures, as well as do a little look forward to the upcoming year's budgeting process. So that was kind of the rhythm that staff had established in response to the committee's requirement to meet twice annually.
Thank you for the clarification. And so I will ask Council Member King and then Council Member Fisher.
I'll move the list that was just posed to us.
Okay, Councilmember.
Second?
Okay, so there's a motion by King and a second by Fisher, and we will have a roll call vote.
Barrett,
Yes.
Barnacle,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Osake.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. And with that, we're on to new business. And item 5A is the resolution adopting the city's policy for collection and discontinuation for non-payment and introduction of an ordinance amending section 15.12.060 of the Petaluma Municipal Code. And we will have Dylan Brady will be the lead, kick this off.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. My name, as the Mayor just said, is Dylan Brady, Assistant City Attorney here in Petaluma. The item before you tonight was a collaborative effort between my office, the Finance Department, who will be administering this policy and is currently administering this policy, as well as the Water Department, who are the boots on the ground and post the notices, disconnect the meters. So this policy is required by Senate Bill 998, or as we call it, SB 998, which requires all public water systems, like the City of Petaluma, to have a written policy of discontinuation of water service for non-payment of only residential property. The policy attached to the staff report that you're asked to ratify tonight complies with the SB 998 requirements, and it is very similar to the amount of time in the notice that the city is already providing its customers. This policy per SB 998 will be in English, Spanish, Chinese, Tagalog, Vietnamese, and Korean. It will be readily available on the city's website and provided if requested. So definitely more accessibility to what our current policy is. The policy as it stands states that the city will only disconnect water services if you are in arrears 60 days. So that is 30 days from so you have to be 30 days and then another 60 days. This policy also permits the delinquent customer to enter alternate payment plans with the city and to appeal any determinations by staff. Staff are working on getting those notices and those policies translated in the aforementioned languages. And I should say too that if during the next census in a couple of weeks when that comes out, if there is another language that's spoken by more than 10% of our citizens, we will translate the policies and the written notices into that language as well. The policy also formalizes the ability to appeal any determinations by staff. The policy requires staff to provide notice on how to reconnect service if it is reconnected or disconnected. I should also say that our policy is more lenient than the requirements of SB 998 in regards to the alternate payment plans. So under the SB 998, it requires a doctor's note as well as proof that you have are not able to pay to enter an alternate payment plan. While in our policy, we will allow any customer to enter a policy that's willing to enter one. These policies can include an alternate payment schedule, partial or even full reduction of unpaid balance, and temporary deferrals. And this information on how to enter the alternate payment plans will be provided in any of the notices and is stated in the policy. Let's see. Also, the policy has the cost of reconnecting services. Our price right now to reconnect, the fee, I should say, to reconnect services is cheaper than what the Senate bill requires. And then also in this item tonight, there's also just a minor cleanup of our municipal code so that our municipal code is in alignment with what our policy and SB 998 says. And then as part of this item, I did want to provide a quick legislative update. During the ARPA discussions, it was discussed and talked about SB 222. So currently, and I checked this morning, is this proposed legislation is currently, as of September 3rd, 2021, it was ordered in active file, which I did the research, and that means leadership kind of does this during the final weeks of the legislative session as kind of a method to encourage the authors of those bills to get their bills promptly. So Currently, as it stands, SB 222 is in a holding period, but there is also AB 148, which is titled the California Water and Wastewater Arrearage Payment Program in the State Water Resources Control Board. This was approved in July, and it permits the water providers, like the city, to seek state funds for those accounts in arrears during the COVID period of March 4th, 2020 through June 15, 2021. Our finance department took the first steps and applied last week. There is a meeting tomorrow night of the Water Resource Control Board to discuss that policy, and staff is currently monitoring it. So I'm here to answer any questions you have, and I believe our finance director, Corey Garbarolio, is here to answer any questions you may have. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions of staff by the council at this point? I see Vice Mayor Barnacle's hands up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I asked this in my council questions, and I wasn't clear in the response I got. So in Exhibit A, in the tenants or occupants in a multi-unit complex served through a master meter, when I read that, I read it as though if, or like I live in this sort of a situation right now, and our landlord pays the water bill, and if for some reason our landlord stopped paying the water bill, the city would discontinue water service to our site. And then what I'm reading there is that I could take on the master meter bill for the entire group of tenants. Is that how I'm reading? Is that correct? How I'm reading that?
So that's definitely not the intent, Vice Mayor. It is to allow the multimeter or single meter to have be their own customer. Let me take a look at that and try to propose some different language to address your concerns. I believe you're discussing on page 8 of the staff report.
Yeah.
Customers. We can play with that tonight, the finance director and I, and work on that language. But yes, the intent is definitely we need to make a good faith effort to allow the tenants in the master meters to become their own, have their own meter, and definitely not to take on the master meter bill.
Yeah, that would be my guidance. And I don't know whether there's something we can do in to require landlords to provide pay the master meter, or install sub meters or something like that. But I would just hate to be in a place where there was, right now I've got 3 units, and if I had 6, I wouldn't want to be trying to negotiate sub agreements or things like that with my fellow tenants.
Agreed.
So I guess my question to follow up on the Vice Mayor's question is, do we need to get that language cleaned up before we vote on the resolution, or are they separate?
I think we'd want to, Madam Mayor, and thanks for the report, Dylan, and for your direction, Vice Mayor. I'm working on bringing it up in the background like Dylan is. What we may want to do is return to this item. We can get some language.
Okay.
Council.
So
tonight. So suspend discussion on this item and return to it once we can.
Okay.
Ready.
All right. So if we're going to do that, should I delay asking for public comment or take public comment at this time?
My suggestion would be to wait. Definitely take public comment before the council takes action, but the members of the public may have comments on what staff are suggesting in response to the Vice Mayor too, so that way we can capture everything.
Okay, so we will suspend discussion on item 5A until, should we do that at the end of the meeting?
That'll give us the most time, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll come back to item 5A after we deal with item 6B. Okay, so thank you for that clarification, Vice Mayor. And now we will go on to new business item 5B, which is a resolution approving the purchase of 25 shelter units and 2 office units in the amount of $338,000 from the City of Petaluma's Interim Housing Solutions Project located at 900 Hopper Street, approving the conceptual site plan and authorizing the city manager to execute all documents necessary to complete the purchase or modify the conceptual site plan. And I think kicking this off will be our Assistant City Manager, Brian Cochran.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. Wanted to just start this one off by acknowledging that homelessness is a complex challenge, and there are many varied reasons and circumstances why folks fall into homelessness and why they remain there for extended periods of time. And the city efforts in this regard, and it's everything from supporting COTS, our main shelter, to bringing in Downtown Streets team, working on a number of affordable housing fronts. We just recently established, as you well know, a mobile showers program that we're working on getting up and running. So we are trying to work this challenge from multiple angles. And so it's in that spirit that we bring this item for you for consideration tonight. And we're excited that we think we found a really interesting and innovative product that can fill a niche within our community, fill kind of a gap in our housing selections, housing availability that we have here in Petaluma, which is an interim housing solution. And we really view this solution that you'll hear more about from Karen Shimizu, our housing manager, in a moment. We view this as sort of one arrow in the quiver, so to speak, of different ways that we are addressing this problem. I wanted to just acknowledge that that you will be seeing more of this type of thing in the future. We've had some discussion of Project Home Key, and I know there are questions about that. We're actively collaborating with the county on a potential Project Home Key project. And there are other things that we're looking at. May need additional interim housing solutions in the future, maybe additional sites that we need to identify different types of housing. So we are actively working on those. So I guess I just wanted to say that this isn't the end. This really is just one piece of our overall housing and homelessness program. And we're excited that we've got this style of housing that we think is in a layout and a program that can really be super beneficial for some of our shelterless residents here in Petaluma. So with that, I will turn it over to Karen to go through the presentation.
Great. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. And Brian, thank you for getting us started on this. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm sorry, I'm having some issues here. Okay. I might need.
Karen, is it the presentation that you sent me earlier?
It is. My apologies. I upgraded my operating system and I did not get my desktop reset. So Patrick, if you can go ahead and pull that up, that would be great. I sent it to you just a little while ago.
Yeah, I got the revised version. I'll share that just in a moment. There we go.
Perfect. All right. Good evening, council members and members of the public. We're here tonight to talk about our interim housing solutions. Next slide. Our presentation this evening, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be providing kind of some high-level overview to types of affordable housing, how the city's focused on responding to our shelter crisis, giving a highlight of the proposed client services and the approach, and then we will be presenting the conceptual site plan. We will have Chris Heath that will be presenting that for us this evening. So at that point, I will turn the presentation over to him, and then he will be returning it to me. We'll be talking about the bid process the city went through, reviewing the staff recommendations, and then also talking about the project timeline and funding. And then staff will be available, myself, the city team, as well as he's been co-project managing with me, Josh Michal, who is in our Public Works Department. Next slide. So just quickly, I wanted to highlight the 3 Ps of affordable housing. We've been using this term. I think it helps us really think clearly about our housing options. We have production, which is creating new affordable units. Those are the developments similar to like Burbank, Mid-Penn, Danco, projects that are creating brand new housing opportunities. Then we have preservation, ensuring and maintaining affordable housing of existing units. An example of that would be recently we worked with Burbank Housing in order to refinance and rehab 90 units of our affordable housing located at Old Elm Village. And then we have protections. When we think about tenant protections, these are services such as fair housing or our mobile home rent stabilization program, but also what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about providing essential services for the most vulnerable members of our community. Next slide. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the shelter crisis and the city response. So the city is responding to the community need. We recently, just last week, the city adopted a shelter crisis and urgency ordinance, passed a resolution. And with this, it provided the flexibility from existing regulations that make it difficult or impossible to act quickly in addressing immediate shelter needs. It also, regarding the state legislation, allowed a level of the city to remain agile in creating innovative shelter solutions. The urgency ordinance will be used as a tool that creates flexibility in the local standards and procedures for design and site development. I wanted to highlight a little bit about our current programs and investment. Our current programs, again, we think of them in about three different ways. We have short-term, which is focused on meals and street outreach, mobile showers. We have interim solutions, which is the agenda item before you this evening. That is shelter, congregate, and non-congregate with intensive case management. And then we have our longer term solutions, which is permanent supportive housing. So people go through the continuum of services, ultimately with a best practices of housing first. Clients come into our system of care or our continuum of services in all different ways. But essentially, the best practices in getting our most vulnerable community members housed is our priority. The last item I wanted to just briefly touch on, and you've been hearing about this, the city is working on a homeless services plan. We've hired a very qualified, well-respected consultant. Andrew Henning will be working with us and supporting us and guiding through that process. We'll be enlisting community input from community members as well as our service providers as far as thinking about what that homeless services plan will roll out like. I think the key thing to think about that is that we're creating a plan that's going to be a local strategy, but that it will tie in with our regional systems. So the larger regional efforts that are happening. Next slide. So we've been receiving some comments based on our proposed project and what would those client services look like. I just wanted to highlight that the service model we'll be building on existing partnerships as well as creating new ones. There'll be service options for our clients, and there'll be many different agencies to support the client needs. It's really going to be a collaboration or a hub of service providers. It will include intensive case management, on-site services, and more importantly, the city team as well as a service provider will be working on building a program operations manual that will kind of identify how the program's going to run and how the operations will be managed. And with that, there'd be regular team meetings with all the partnerships. I did put a list here of the partnerships: Downtown Streets Team, Legal Aid, Petaluma Health. I won't read them all, but I did want to highlight that we have been talking with the county, the IMDT team, which does provide intensive wraparound services, specifically working with high vulnerable populations. The on-site services will be focused on doing an assessment and goal planning, coordinated case management, life skills recovery, substance abuse treatment, expungement. Again, I'm not going to read through the list. I just want to highlight that there'll be more than one organization. It'll be a hub of services, and our clients will have opportunities to work with different organizations. Next slide. This next part of the project is I wanted to talk before we get into actually taking a look at the process in how we achieve getting to the site plan, the conceptual site plan that we're presenting to you this evening. We had a series of stakeholder meetings, and that was with representatives from the different city departments as well as local service providers. We really wanted to think about what did we need to think about for this site. We also talked about what would staff did a lot of research based on existing programs, operational costs, thinking about services being adjacent as a way to when we came forward with a project location and a design that we would have the ability to link services adjacent to our new project. With that, we did go through a process of, I think it was about 6 different plans. I think our team architect, Chris Heath with MAD Architecture Incorporated, will be sharing with you that journey we took as well as items that staff took into consideration. So with that, I will turn the presentation over to Chris. Next slide. Chris, are you there?
He is there. I think he's looking for his mute button.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Thank you, Karen, and members of the City Council. As Karen said, I'm from MAD Architecture, and we were brought on board to conduct a feasibility study for placing 25 mobile units on site in the parking lot at the Mary Isaac Center. As Karen mentioned, we took part in a series of meetings to listen to the needs of various stakeholders, which included the COTS staff, COTS Board of Directors, Public Works, the Streets Department, and various members of city staff. In this first slide, you'll see the existing conditions at the Petaluma Courtyard with the existing main structure shaded in gray, the COTS Mary Isaac Center being in the middle top, just immediately south or below that. We have Recology has a yard, as does Public Works. Further to the left or southwest, we have the animal shelter for the city. And then up at the upper left, we have Streets, which has a yard there. Next slide, please. So this is an overview of the final feasibility study that we conducted. And I'd like you to look at this as basically a diagram of what can fit on site. This is not a final site plan, but there were some key parameters that came out in the stakeholder meetings, which are reflected here. One of the important things was that we preserved access to Recology and Public Works. Those are the green pathways. Streets had access as well, which is getting modified slightly. And we identified the project site as the south side of the existing COTS Mary Isaac Center, which is where that row of pink squares is. That was initially where it was located. Later, with input from city staff, it expanded to the west side, running up along the west property line, or not property line, but area of the COTS parking lot. And let's see, next slide. Okay, a little clearer image here. Just to go over the basic idea of the layout, things have a kind of a central hub in the middle near where there's an entry. And all the amenities are clustered there. Some important features of the site are that we preserved the vehicle access around the Kotz Mary Isaac Center. There's an existing fire lane that had to be maintained. It's also used for deliveries. And there are entrances and exits from Hopper Street at both the east and west side of the Kotz Mary Isaac Center. If you look at the lower left corner, we have a new parking area there, which was designated for that use. It wasn't practical to put any units there because it's a little too steep in some places. But the net gain of parking due to some places that we lose to the units is 23 spaces. So we are gaining parking, which was very important to the staff at Kotz that we didn't lose any. Again, let's go to the next slide. This is a blow-up view of the Kotz Mary Isaac Center. You can see the parking area and fire lane that surrounds it. The units themselves are the pink squares. They're about 70 square feet each, intended to mainly be single occupancy. There's 25 of those for privacy, which seems important. And there's about 10 feet of space between each of them. Getting to the area near the entry gate, where we have our amenities, the rectangles in light blue are restrooms and showers. We have a total of 6 toilets and 4 showers. This is actually slightly more than required by code, but so it should be plenty. The dark blue rectangle is a laundry facility. By the way, these are all portable units, which I think Karen will get into a little later. The red rectangle is a staff structure where staff could have a break room and also meet with some of the occupants. Down in the lower left-hand corner, those are 3 storage containers in dark green. The longest diagonal one is used by the Kotz staff. The 2 shorter ones would be newer 30-foot containers brought on site for use by the occupants. And they would all be done with supervised use by staff, so they're not open full-time to the residents. There are also incorporated some sitting areas. You can see those on here. The dark green square is an outdoor sitting area, and there's also a designated smoking area a little further to the right, which is the kind of X'd out square area. It was identified that most of the likely residents here would actually have dogs with them, so it was important to put some dog runs in. There's actually 3 separate spaces there, in case the dogs don't get along, I suppose. The whole thing is surrounded by secure fencing, which is the dashed red line. That was quite important, both for the security of the occupants and to create a sense of separation from the Mary Isaac Center, which was another parameter that was identified fairly early on. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Karen, and thank you for your time.
Next slide, Patrick. Great. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for taking us through the process and sharing that conceptual site plan. This next part of the project or the presentation tonight is I wanted to share with you a little bit about the bid process and the key criteria that staff mapped out for the project. So what we did is, I think Chris highlighted the fact we have 25 shelter units, 4 showers, and 6 toilets that we requested bids on. We published the bid in accordance with the city purchasing ordinance, as well as we posted the notice and we emailed the bid packet out to 10 organizations and individuals that had expressed interest in the project. The city received a total of 4 formal proposals, 3 for shelter solutions and 1 for showers and toilets. The proposals for the housing solutions are before you this evening. I wanted to highlight, I kind of did this slide just to provide a higher level of what staff was looking for, we created an outline that we believed would tie with our climate action framework, as well as city goals, and to move this project forward. So some of the areas we focused in, we had three main key areas: quality, sustainability, and efficiency. I'm not going to read every one, but that was about the unit size, the insulation values, the reusability, shipping impacts, project lead time, California Energy Code, and the Cal Green Code Tier 1. The other aspect that was important to us was thinking about the life cycle of the project, the product. When we were doing our initial research, that's one of the things that staff identified, is that some of these products have a 10-year life cycle, others have a 30-year life cycle. We thought that was important to bring that up as we thought about the cost of the product and its life cycle for an annual cost value for the city. We also requested information on maintenance and energy costs. What's the operating cost that if we use a certain shelter, what would that impact be on the project operating budget? And last but not least, we really wanted to think about the reputation and responsibility of our community partners that we're working with. Is there mission alignment? Was the product compatible with Petaluma design standards? The product, how was it going to provide a sense of home or a sense of community for the site? And also, we asked for information regarding the company team. Taking this all into consideration, my staff was reviewing the proposals. We were trying to keep in mind balancing a sense of urgency, client safety, and also providing a sense of community. Next slide. So with this, I would like to present the staff recommendation this evening. It was that there's many aspects of this product and why staff considered bringing it forward for recommendation. The company itself, the mission alignment, the vision, providing dignity and safety to those in needs. The mission, supply mobile, code compliant shelter solutions. On the far side of the slide, you can see the core qualities that they presented. It was California code compliant, quick to deploy, minimal site prep, low operation costs. This was a great opportunity for non-congregate shelter. It also has a 30-year material lifespan. And most importantly as well, the mission of the company, they actually employ community members that were previously homeless. They actually have already employed a few of our community members, not that they live specifically in Petaluma, but in the Sonoma County area. And they've not only trained them, but they're providing them employment opportunities, and they're earning a living wage of $25 an hour. The product itself, I have a couple photos here that you can kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at. So the price per unit is $12,000. It's 72 square feet of living space of non-congregate shelter. It's easily cleaned. There's minimal site prep that's needed to stand the unit up due to the floor design, and it has a 40 amp service. The walls have an R value of 21, and the ceiling has an R value of 29. So that insulation really helps with climate control and soundproofing. For this product, there is a 9-week lead time, but we also found that this unit, because of the way it was structured and the design, that it had a lower annual maintenance and operational costs per unit per year. Next slide. While I just discussed the staff recommendation, I think it's important that the council and community know that there's many different approaches for shelter solutions out there. The city received 3 formal proposals, and then we also had conversations with community members that opted to not choose to submit a proposal. The pallet shelters, this shelter type was installed for the County of Sonoma at the Los Guilacos community. They run about $8,640 a piece. I guess that's not exact, that's exact. But they have R2 insulation factor. They have a useful life of 10 years, but they're shipped from Seattle, so they're not a local vendor. While the lead time in this is 2 weeks, we reviewed that other criteria, and we felt that the Quick Haven would be a better recommendation and a better fit for our city. We also received a proposal from the Homeless. They're a local company in Sonoma County, but this model here, what they do is they take shipping containers and then they turn them into housing units. While it's a unique approach and design, and we like the idea they were a local company from Sonoma County, the product they use is shipped from Texas. Also, based on what you just saw about the site, we do have some site constraints, and so we needed units that could more easily be arranged and distributed on the site. The lead time for this was also 16 weeks. The next, Living Earth Structures is, oh, sorry, Patrick. The next company, they chose not to submit a formal proposal, but we had several conversations with the owner of Living Earth Structures. This is a Cobb-style building that's used by building recycled materials. This is a picture from a project they did in Oakland, where they actually enrolled several of the unsheltered community members to build this project. And talking more about the project and what the city was looking for and some of the needs that we wanted, they decided that maybe it wouldn't be a good fit for their project at this time, although they're interested in doing something in Petaluma, basically just because the mobility would be difficult. In regard to this project before us, they are interested in maybe doing some aspect of community amenities. And lastly, I wanted to bring up, I don't have a photo of it, but there were some residents that reached out that had a concept of Costanoga huts. They were brought forward by community members. It's a volunteer build, but essentially what it is it provides a shelter that's similar to a tent, and it doesn't provide a warm, regular shelter. So the group in the community that was thinking about that, I believe they're working on another type of proposal. But really, in summary, what I just want to say is that while staff's recommendation is the Quick Haven model, we see that there's a lot of different opportunities and ways and models to think about a second project. Next slide. With that, I'd like to just highlight the project timeline, the phases, and the budget. So we're looking at this project as phase one. What we're bringing before you tonight for discussion and consideration is the conceptual site plan and the equipment approval. The reason for that is that we figure, well, we needed to identify the shelter units so we could continue and complete the remaining site design, talking about utilities, fencing, ramps, and we needed to know what the shelter unit was so it could fit in with the site plan. Phase two, staff is planning on November 15th to bring back the remaining site plan improvements that'll include utility connections, fencing, and remaining equipment, as well as our client service contracts. So you have that to look forward to. Phase three is really standing up the project. And the great part of this is moving residents in. We anticipate, if all goes as planned, that we'd be able to have this site operational by December and January. I think I did want to highlight a little bit. There were some questions about the budget. At this time, we know the costs associated with phase one. Staff is working on pulling together the budget for phase two, which would be the remaining site improvements as well as the professional services. With just rough estimates, because staff is still, there's options we're looking into and starting to, work with the design team and thinking about materials. We're anticipating, and this is a rough estimate, we're anticipating that it would cost about $700,000 to stand the village up. to put it in place, to have it client ready, which would leave us about $1 million remaining that could go towards our client service contracts. So currently with the 1.7 million of city funding, we would have about $335,000 a year to go towards supporting client services. The city also is having conversations. The county released a NOFA for projects, which this project qualifies for and is aligned with, for $2 million. Staff is working based on the actions of council tonight. Staff will be working, if approved, staff will be working on pulling together a proposal and requesting operational and site improvement funding. So there's more to come on that. That NOFA is due to the county on October 8th. Next slide. So just some quick, project highlights and presentation highlights. I'm sure we're going to have a great conversation this evening. But really, this project that staff is proposing and the community is proposing is responding to an urgent need. It's providing much needed, non-congregate interim housing for our most vulnerable, our community. The services will be aligned with best practices, housing first, client-focused solutions. How do we support our community members from living in tents or living in cars on the streets and get them on the journey to be able to live in a secure place and have secure housing? And the last point I just wanted to say, this really is a community effort. Staff and the team has had many conversations with projects that are considering projects, as well as service providers and looking at service plans. So it's really a community effort. And that collaboration of services, we're actually having conversations with organizations that we hadn't thought of before, because we know this is a vulnerable population that we're going to be working with. And lastly, the funding resources. While the city has $1.7 million and staff will be coming back, sharpening the pencil with an outline of the remaining project costs and services budget, know that we know of the one additional funding source out there, but new funding sources for this type of work are coming up all the time. I shouldn't say all the time, but they're coming up more frequently. And I think that's something we need to think about. So with that, I will go ahead and end the presentation, and I think we can go into comments and questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And I see hands up already among council members. So I'll start with Councilmember Fisher and go to Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A question about the site plan and the parking for the 42 spaces and the fact that it's behind 2 new gates. Will that parking just be for the residents of the 25 structures or for others as well?
The new parking is intended that it would be for the residents as well as COT staff. Chris, you can comment on that as well.
Yeah, we have more than we need there for the residents of the new shelter units. So COT staff would be able to use that as well.
And would people living in their cars be able to use that?
At this time, we haven't proposed that as part of this initial project. I think the city team is working hard on getting this first phase of the project operational. And then I think once we have an understanding of the site, the operations, the impact, what's working best, then I think staff could consider looking at maybe additional uses on the site. But at this time, we don't have in our service plan any safe parking activities planned.
Got it. Yeah, it's always just disappointing to put cars where we could be putting people. And then just an observation, it feels like, I know we have really limited space here, but it feels like we need more areas to congregate, more community building space. And maybe, again, that can be sort of in the next phase if you know, Mr. Kabelot comes along, because I think that was the great thing about the Oakland space that he designed, was that it did bring community together. And this being so linear doesn't really create a design element that brings people together. But all in all, I think it's fabulous, and I'm so pleased that we're doing it. And thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember McDonald, followed by Councilmember Posake.
I can concur with Councilwoman Fisher. I'm so glad that you're moving on this and moving with such speed. It is great to see in your report that you're acknowledging that this is only one part of a complex solution to homelessness. I mean, the goal is, you know, functional zero, which seeks to eliminate long-term homelessness and prevent folks from falling into homelessness. But it's such a broad goal. This one thing won't remove the tents in Steamer Landing or Cedar Grove or any of the other large encampments in our city. But it's the movement towards a solution that really has me excited and for the people. You also mentioned the 3 Ps: production, preservation, protection. It's funny, those were the fundamentals of the CASA Compact that we didn't support a while back. But that's the statewide recognition failure to provide affordable housing is just pushing us to more and more state interventions. And so long as it comes with more and more state money like this, I'm okay with the feds helping to pay, the state helping to pay for more improvements. So I appreciate your keeping on looking for that funding outside of the city dollar. And thanks again for having this first prototype up at the Mary Isaacs Center last week, where many of the council were there and could, open and close the door, see how big 72 square feet really is or isn't, and how close 2 units can be there. You clearly learned all the lessons that the county learned by hard knocks when they set up an emergency village, and when we're having a little more time to pull it together right. All that better insulation, the better heating, the cooling, the fire protection issues, and the cost to keep the operating costs down, that toilet waste pumping, that's such a burden for them that hopefully we won't have in our operating costs. And that need of storage that you mentioned, where they can check in, check out bags of personal gear that doesn't fit or clutters their unit. I mean, you've really got this going in a good direction. We do need an honest assessment of how long these units will be needed at this location. I mean, when we say things like interim, it refers to both the building, I suppose, and to the people who will be in it. And probably you want to tell me that the Andrew Henning report out in the future is going to cover most of my next questions, but how will we fund the wraparound services? How will it work over years? You know, you get funding the first year, but where does it come from the second year? How will residents be recruited or selected into this? Is this just for the chronically homeless, or how will you focus the success rate here? And how will residents be encouraged to graduate? How long can they stay? What skills will be taught? What programs support this? It's only a partial solution to have a structure. It's so important that these other services come up and that people understand that. Will this report out to the county? I mean, I'm not sure if you can answer these today or defer me to the November report. Will this show up on the housing, the HMIS system? Will this be coordinated through that coordinated entry system that's available, or will it be local placement only? Will the county's big program of IMDT, will those services really arrive here? And then what are our security costs? Will we have limited in-out procedure like the Los Skelicos has limited and no partnering, all those kind of things? And then long-term, do we see these people getting Section 8 vouchers? Are the Section 8 vouchers available to Petaluma and to getting set up? And so, what are we doing to land more Section 8 vouchers and housing? So who's out there getting the housing? Because this is only, as noted in the title, interim. We need to move the next step. So I just, I've written pages of questions about the process that we'll go through, and I'm assuming all the answers will come out in November. But I just really want to commend staff on the quick deliverable of this. And the question, I guess, really is, what's the critical timeline issue? I mean, we're talking about December, January, that's rainy, that's cold. Is it the council's dates and schedules that limits the ability to accelerate this? Can the housing be phased so the park improvements are separated? We're in an emergency. There ought to be a way to accelerate things. Rather than ramble, I'll allow that to be the question I look to answer. How do we accelerate?
So I'm just going to say that staff should not feel pressured to answer every one of those questions.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I did make a list, Kevin. Those are all really fabulous questions. So the idea is that this would be a 3-year project to get started. So we will be seeking funding to ensure that we can operate this site for at least 3 years. In regard to the priority and who will be served, staff is still working on that. There's been some great examples. We've looked at the Los Guilicos model in regard to their services. We've talked to Mountain View, another community in the Bay Area that's done a similar project. So those, a lot of those details will be worked out and they will be forthcoming, but there will also be a lot of thought put into that. In regard to who will be prioritized, I think that is a question that staff is working on. We're having conversations with the county as well as their existing, NOFA funding that they just put out. So we will be taking that into consideration and making sure that with Petaluma's, significant investment here that we're taking care of folks in Petaluma. We are hand in hand with Andrew Henning. He's actually working directly on the Section 8 voucher and having housing vouchers available. He's a significant resource to our team, and he will be bringing forward more of that information. I wanted to highlight one thing about security. So why we will be putting some fencing up to this. In a conversation I had with St. Vincent de Paul today, they said security they have some protocols there where people that want to visit the site need to go through a security screening, because we're talking about very vulnerable individuals that need to feel safe in their housing community. So have people that are there, monitoring who goes in and who goes out. So really a program like this, because of the life experiences and the level of vulnerability of the people we're working with, it's really to provide protection and security in them so they can focus more on healing and getting better and addressing some of the barriers that they have in life. So with that, I think, Kevin, I addressed a lot of your questions, but I'm always available for more. So I'll stop there.
Thank you.
I think that one, if I could, that is there any barrier to accelerating a people in the house estate? Or is that just the critical timeline?
I think the barrier and how the timeline has been established is that because what staff is proposing is we're looking at options for utility hookups and how that would work, that we actually need some engineering done on the site. The first group of homes would be available in 9 weeks. So that's something we could go back and we could talk with the project team about that is, could we stand up and have part of the project ready? And I think that would be something that I would probably really need to talk with the civil engineer and Josh, who's really been kind of leading the public works.
Great, thanks.
On this, but we can look into that. I'll make a note of that. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Councilmember Posake, followed by Councilmember King. Dennis, you're on mute.
I don't have a lot to add to what Councilmember McDonald said. I'm all for acceleration, and I really appreciate the rapidity with which staff has accomplished this to this point with this phase 1. I at the same time, this has been so rapid that I have a little dizziness from that already. That I want to be honest about, but I think this is the way we need to move. One thing I didn't hear in the presentation, which I thought I read in the staff report, was about a proposal being submitted to Sonoma County to provide $2 million for safe parking funding. And but I'm also happy that if that will occur, that I think this puts us in a good shape to access some of that. And finally, I just had a question about, is Andrew Henning already working for us, or is that still okay? Did he have a last question? Did he have any role in selecting this home product?
I can go ahead and address those questions. So, yes, Andrew has been working side by side. He was on the site planning. He's been with us in the preliminary conversations around what the services will be shaping and how that collaboration will come forward. He also did review the product. He was his recommendation was actually for the Quick Haven product as well, because it did really provide a sense of home. It was something, you know, it was a good alternative from the pallet and or the homes for Sonoma. So he has been working with us side by side. He's amazing. I really look forward to the community getting to know him when we do more of our homeless services plan. And I just wanted to comment on the NOFA that the county issued. That can be for safe parking and or for interim housing solutions like this project. So it can be used for both of those uses. We have had some preliminary conversations with the county. They do know we were bringing this project forward to council for review and consideration this evening. And based on the outcomes of your decision tonight, we will be following up with them. I also wanted to make a comment as well, and that is about the safe parking. While staff has been focused on this interim housing solution, we've also continued to think about other options. So staff is working on thinking about other sites where we could potentially do a safe parking program. So that's not off the table. We're just working that into our work plan as we move forward with some of these solutions.
And I appreciate all the flexibility that we're discussing. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember King, followed by Councilmember Healy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too appreciate being able to go out there last Friday afternoon to see what's being proposed. I think that was very helpful. This is a hard type of thing to pull off of a piece of paper or even a computer screen, live. I appreciate that as a very helpful event. Some of my questions have been answered by the prior questions, but one of the questions I have, I know we're coming back to this, and maybe this will be something that will be in a subsequent report, is whether the degree at this point, whether there's been any outreach to the homeless community about the interest in participating and living in the conditions that are proposed. And when I say conditions, I mean the housing and everything else. I ask this because my take on the homeless community is that there's a lot of viewpoints. It's not a monolithic group of people. So that's question number one, and whether that's answered tonight or at another meeting, I'd like to find out what we did to make sure that these 25 homes, which it appears we're investing, $700,000 for tonight, even though the item is only for the purchase. The reality is it's 700,000 that, by Karen's best estimate, that they're going to be used. And the flip side of that is we did receive a letter, or an email rather, from Jane Hamilton, our former council member and the current executive director of Rebuilding Together, expressing an interest in volunteer participation going forward. And I do support that. I think that if these items are a success, and I'm very hopeful that they will be, that there's going to be a need for doing something similar at some location around the city to be determined, and that we're probably going to need, there's a lot of talk about future funding, but until it comes down the pike, we're going to have a need that exceeds what we have what we have at hand. And so there's there's probably going to be a need to expand a program like this going forward. So coming back, I'd like to see, what may be done with respect to that. I realize that's putting the next phase ahead of, not ahead of anything, but having a discussion about it. But I think it's something that's important that we have 25 homes and we have a homeless population that well exceeds that. So those are a couple of comments. Another comment I have, there's a mention of providing assistance via transportation. And I would hope that would include Petaluma transit passes to anybody living in these facilities. In addition, maybe we can also work with the county to see if they can provide a county pass for the people living in these homes. Some of the job interviews and other services that they're going to need are going to be outside our city limits. And that may be the best way for many of these people to get around. Bear with me. I'm going through my list and I should have been checking off, but I've gotten a lot of answers so far. I don't want to be redundant, but I would like to see some very specific, to the degree we can, information on leveraging funding and expanding upon that as we go forward. I would like the staff to kind of comment on the Conestoga huts. I know that's a work in progress and may be part of a phase 2. I haven't seen one up close and personal, but I have seen their website. It's not quite the same as being physically on site, but it seems like it's a possibility that would be helpful. And we are going to have probably a finite amount of money going forward. I believe that's it. Oh, my other comment is I'm glad that some of these are going to be homes that permit dogs and pets. I think the quality of life of someone with an animal is important, and I know that many places will not accept animals. I actually referred somebody to COTS, and that's a couple of weeks back, probably 2 weeks ago, and she explained to me she had a dog and couldn't get in. So I don't know if that's accurate, but I think that's a very good element of this. So hopefully those questions are clear. I appreciate the presentation tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Madam Mayor, would you like me to comment on that?
Yes, I would. Yes, I would.
Okay. All right. Councilmember King, thank you for those thoughtful questions. I guess I would start out by saying that there is, and that we recognize that our vulnerable community members engage in services at all different times and for all different reasons. And based on that, we did work with COTS as well as the Downtown Streets team. They did do some surveys. They did go out, they did, talk to our unsheltered community members and ask them how they would feel about living in a non-congregate shelter. During when we had the demo set up on site, we actually received some feedback directly from community members that said, when are these going to be available? This would be amazing. We do recognize that a lot of our community members have pets, and that is one of the things that's really positive about this. Is a lot of shelters don't have those options available. I think the other key item that we heard back is that clients wanted options and service providers. Again, no one, we are fortunate in Petaluma to have many different service providers. And so we can work more with pairing our clients with service providers that they're going to be matched with. It gives them options. It's not this is your only option, this is your only choice. And so I think also we've let our unsheltered community members know that, and that's, removing one of their barriers or one of their concerns. In regard to leveraging funding, that's what the city does on a regular basis. We have a really brilliant team that's working on this, and we'll be able to provide you more information as to how we'll be leveraging the funding. And I guess I did want to just comment in Jane and Anthony. I've had conversations with both of them. And why they did, Anthony actually brought forward the Conestoga hut idea, but when she did more research, it was, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be speaking for her, but this is my recollection of our conversation. she mentioned that they wanted to do something that was going to provide more of a real home-like feel. And the Costanoga huts didn't have the insulation and the warmth that a regular structure would have. And so they pulled that off the table. I do know that they're looking and thinking about some other ideas. And, staff is looking forward to having conversations with them. Again, it really comes down to there is no one approach in providing shelter and services. And we're keeping that open.
Thank you very much. And I will go on to Councilmember Healy.
Thank you. So Councilmember King asked my primary question, which is what the outreach was to unsheltered individuals directly, because I heard lots of talk about outreach to stakeholder groups, and none of the stakeholder groups that were mentioned included actual homeless in the staff presentation. So I do want to not just be in a field of dreams situation, and if you build it, they will come, hopeful assumption. So I would hope staff can do more of that between now and the next time, so that we have a better sense of how many folks actually want to move into this. And I would concur with, wanting to support the folks in the community, the O'Briens and Jane Hamilton and her group, who are interested in the O'Briens apparently have a prototype that should be ready in the next few days, and something that could be considered for the next phase, and there will be a next phase. And then my one remaining outstanding question is, could staff please talk about sprinklers, the need to put sprinklers in these, or whether it's exempted because of our emergency declaration? Thank you.
Great. I will answer the first part of the question, and maybe potentially we can have Josh with our Public Works Department get into more detail if that's needed. So I did want to comment that we actually did have folks tour the units and our unsheltered community members, and they really had positive feedback. So we did do that primary research. I want to apologize, Anthony. I think I pronounced your name wrong, so my apologies on that. And in regard to the sprinkler and fire suppression units, staff is currently working, the building department as well as fire, and there are alternatives to addressing fire safety. We actually had a meeting today, and I'm not sure if Josh, if you can answer that more articulately than I can, or.
Yeah, based on our conversation, the sprinklers would not be required as long as we have sufficient protection within the structure itself. And there's other means and methods of helping to address that risk. But we are also not taking sprinklers off the table. We do want to look at all of these aspects together, but the addition of sprinklers does have an increased cost to the project, and they are currently designed to meet code as they are.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question, Councilmember Healy. Okay, and so we'll go on to Vice Mayor Barnacle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I waited to the end because I knew I had a bunch of questions that were going to get answered. So I do have quite a few more, so bear with me. Is there one of the things that a couple of prior council members have asked, is there a wait list at Los Guilicos right now?
I do not have the answer to that, but I would imagine they probably do.
Okay. Yeah, I saw Councilmember McDonald was shaking his head yes, so I'll take that. So is there a shared kitchen available for people to make their own food?
Actually, we weren't planning on having, at this time, we haven't designed a shared kitchen into the site. Meals would be provided for our clients. That is something that, as we're looking at the community amenities, we've seen some different models that just provide meals to clients. And then we've also seen some other models where clients would have access to basic food and maybe, a microwave or a refrigerator to keep some things stored.
Okay. And then can you explain why we need a fence to separate the parking lot from the village? I don't know. Is there a name for this? Are we calling it something other than Mary Isaac Center or anything like that?
Actually, we haven't officially named the project yet. We wanted to bring it forward to council for consideration, and maybe depending on the results tonight, we'll think about actually giving the community a name. So we didn't want to get ahead of ourselves. So your question again in regard to parking was your concern about, can you state that again?
Why are we building a fence to separate the existing parking lot from the new proposed development?
You mean fencing around the shelter units themselves? Is that what you're asking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that goes back to, it was actually a great conversation with St. Vincent's this morning. And because we are going to be working with people that have had different life experiences and are vulnerable, they said fencing the community gives them a sense of security. And also when people go to visit the site, they're screened to make sure we don't have any people with bad behavior that would be able to access the site. So it provides a sense of security for our clients.
Okay. And who would be doing the screening in that case?
That would be done. It'll all be part of the program services. I'm not sure the exact staff member that would be doing that, but it would be done at a high level where if you want to be someone that can visit and visit someone in one of the shelter units, then there would be a screening that would go through. So it would be part of the program administration.
Okay. And then did we do a parking survey on the parking lot to see what the capacity was in the parking lot at different times during the day, the current parking lot?
We did not do a parking survey. I think we based and Chris can maybe comment on this specifically. I think we based the parking on the number of spaces that cots and visitors and clients would no longer have available based on standing up the units in the parking area and basically replace the existing number of parking spaces.
Got you. I thought I heard that there was a net gain of 23 parking spaces. Did I mishear that earlier?
I can just add to that.
Yeah.
The net gain of 23 parking places would be essentially for the new residents on site. The COT staff and residents would have an unchanged number of parking spaces.
So we're essentially building this to where it's like 0.95 parking spaces per house?
Close to that. One piece of feedback we got from Los Guilicos is that most of the residents have cars who stay in these kinds of units.
Okay. And is there any bike racks proposed?
Yes, we would be taking a look. I think that will be coming back with, by tonight, we've just been focusing on the main conceptual design. That will come back with the community amenities with, table, outdoor gathering areas, bike racks, storage units for clients. So yes, bike racks would be a part of the project.
Great. I'd like to see at least one bike rack per unit. Let's see if we can go the right way here. And even bikes, there's a lot of donated bikes that maybe we can have there. Let's see. I asked this again in my council question and didn't get the answer. I'm trying to understand what the definition of housing is in Housing First. Is it like what we're providing right now? Is it, access to a kitchen and a bathroom? Is it you have your own kitchen and bathroom? What, in the Housing First model, how is it described or defined?
Housing First is defined as an approach to services. So it's really you can be working with folks that might still be living in an encampment. You can work with someone that's working in an interim housing solution. You can be working with a client that is precariously housed or at risk of losing their housing. And the idea is that if the clients have a place to call home, if they have housing, a safe, decent, affordable place to live, therefore they can rest, and they will have the energy to focus on the rest of any other barriers.
Gotcha. Okay, that's helpful. And it'll tie into my council comments later. I just wanted to get that asked. And then are you envisioning, there's been some comments or questions about volunteers. Is there any element of this that will have volunteer participation in it?
Are you talking about community volunteers or clients volunteering, or both?
Both.
Okay. I had a conversation about that with St. Vincent de Paul today, and they said that they do have clients that do volunteer around to help with, chores and things that need to be done around the community area. And and then they provide them with gift cards or some kind of way of thanking them. I would imagine that when we get to the next phase of this and bring forward more of the service plan, as well as the city's homeless services plan, a segment of that, we had a lot of input from community members that said, how can we help? How can we get involved? So as we come forward with the service contracts and also the framework for the homeless services plan, a part of that will be, here's the different areas and here's how you can get involved. So I don't have a specific answer to that, but I know that there's a lot of very kind, generous people in Petaluma that are either providing meals and helping vulnerable members in various different ways. So I do see there will be a volunteer component that will be able to help with this program as well as others.
Great. I'll save the rest for after public comment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, we will go to public comment, and I will ask our city clerk if she's received any correspondence on this item.
Madam Mayor, we received 3 public comments prior to the meeting, which are all posted with the agenda packet.
Thank you. And now we will open public comment. I'll ask our moderator to see if there's anyone in the Zoom audience who would like to speak on this item.
That's not the right screen. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the public wishing to speak on this item, please raise your hand in Zoom and you'll be called on in turn. You'll have 3 minutes in which to give your comments. And I see we have 4 hands raised currently. The first is Anthony O'Brien, followed by Ben Peters. Anthony, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Good evening. I'm part of a volunteer group that has provided food and shelter for the homeless for almost a year. We've designed a prototype shelter, you're right, Karen, with similar functionality of Quick Haven. We ask that our prototype be evaluated for phase 2 before you commit the remaining $1.4 million to Hopper Street. The city staff moved expeditiously with the Quick Haven solution. Time is of the essence, and Quick Haven as a phase 1 village pod is a great start. Please consider committing funds to our prototype, which is less than half the price of Quick Haven for phase 2. Let's use more of the ARPA funds for actual housing, not remodeling existing sites or adding new amenities. Since COTS has not been running at full capacity, do we need additional staff offices, bathrooms, and showers? Under agenda item 5B, to me, it looks like almost all of the 1.7 million would be approved for 900 Hopper. Yet adding 25 units at COTS helps only a small portion of the over 130 unsheltered. I propose that another village location be funded. We propose 10 shelter units at approximately $5,000 each at city-owned property at 1500 Petaluma Boulevard South, where PPSC is located. Our community, from the donations I've gotten for our prototype, enthusiastically supports a collaboration with the homeless to build this phase 2 village pod together. This is Petaluma. This is who we are. PPSC and Rebuilding Together Petaluma are engaged and willing to help build and operate the phase 2 village. There are multiple locations that could be used at 1500 Petaluma Boulevard South. Rebuilding Together Petaluma is extremely confident in their ability to bring together all the volunteer resources necessary to build these shelters. This phase 2 village would be best managed by PPSC, but in partnership with COTS. We would suggest that PPSC implement a program used in Eugene where the residents are empowered by organizing their village, giving them a sense of pride. All services would be available at PPSC. Additionally, showers, toilets, and kitchen facilities are available at the COTS Family Center, located right next door. We understand that the Family Center is underutilized and could be available to the village. It is also essential that Petaluma Transit once again reinstate services to this area. Please advise who we should work with to move forward with prototype approval, formal funding request approval, and site location selection. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Anthony. Next speaker is Ben Peters, followed by Jane Hamilton. Ben, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Yeah, thanks. I couldn't agree more with the previous speaker. We need to be already thinking about a phase 2 on this. I would just like to note, I think we should potentially evaluate not having electrical hookups for each of the units. I don't know if that cost is warranted. And then there are also some additional temporary portable solar energy units that have been provided at previous shelters, like the one in San Jose. So please try and sharpen the pencil on any future utilities expenditures and reuse that money to go towards phase 2 housing. And then I'd just like to quickly add, with the indoor air quality crisis that we have, I do hope that each of the units is equipped with an indoor air purifier. They're very affordable, and every unit should have one. Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. Next speaker is Jane Hamilton, followed by Susan Oakes. Jane, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Okay, am I in?
Yep, go ahead.
Good. So my Rebuilding Together board met tonight, and we're the entire board is unanimous about being very excited about being able to put our expertise and energy into helping phase 2 happen. So we would like direction, and how do we get started, and who do we work with? Our new executive director is a project manager for a very large construction company, very experienced in managing complex projects. We have many skilled volunteers who've been asking for years to work on this. And if we just had the wherewithal to do it and the city staff to work with, we would love to do it. So that's all I have to say. And it's off to a great start. I'm really glad that you're doing this phase 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Next speaker is Susan Oakes, followed by Susan Kirks. Susan, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Thank you. And good evening, City Council and City staff. Great presentation, Karen. Thank you for all of the background. Thank you for setting up the viewing of the tiny home at Quickhaven, or by Quickhaven, last Friday at Mary Isaacs. It was great to see it in real time and not just the website. I was really pleased to learn that Quickhaven is a local Sonoma County business and also employs the unhoused folks to be on the production team. As the project moves forward, I would be interested in hearing more about the management of the village and the camp rules. And you touched on it a little bit, but my hope is that these parts of the project would be developed along with the unhoused folks being part of the creation. And that was part of the collaboration team that I did not hear in your list there, is to have some of the unhoused folks, have them on the committee and see what they come up with, but also have them be part of the management and creating the jobs or the chores, because when they we all have a sense of, we want to do stuff that helps, that is worthwhile and feels good. I totally support the O'Brien's project. We've been working, like she said, like Anthony said, for over a year. supporting some of our houseless folks with food and other things like showers and use of a car. And when we get to know certain people, then we are able to, do a little bit more with them. Let's see. But I'm still suggesting we also find a place for a campground where people can set up a tent and have all the services of porta potties, hand washing, drinking, showers, trash pickup. Have a traveling service team that would come to go to them and get all the same services. If they were sitting next to cots, they could still have all of those services. I think it could get set up more quickly while the tiny homes are being built and set up, so that people have a place to go, know that they're not going to be moved. And if they know that, I think it lends to having a more organized, tidy space and rules. I mean, yeah. Let's see. I do want to thank the city for turning the water on at Steamer Landing for our folks that are out there. And thank you all again for the difficult job that you all have with all of these decisions to be made on behalf of our community. So thank you. I'm very grateful to all of you. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. Next speaker is Susan Kirks, followed by Bev at Protect Wild Petaluma. Susan, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Thank you. I agree with all of the prior speakers tonight, every comment that was made. I would also like to see the City Council give direction with for the Rebuilding Together O'Brien partnership and project this evening, so that that site can begin to be in process now. So that you have phase 1 and phase 2 in process at the same time. I had the opportunity to serve on the Rebuilding Together board for several years in I guess it was when Jane joined as executive director a year before that, and then several years afterward. And we really have a wonderful resource in Rebuilding Together, and also a level of sensitivity to our community. When I was looking at your design this evening and the location, I guess I do have a few feelings of hesitancy about it. And the last speaker, Ms. Oakes, certainly spoke with resonance about knowing the unsheltered individuals in our community. So to add to your thinking, I know that many of our unsheltered residents live near the river. It is a place of solitude, a place of healing. They often choose certain places where nature can be healing for life and for a daily life. So I'd like to ask each location to consider that and to integrate and incorporate some natural elements, whether it's tree planting, the opportunity for gardening, for plants, because I think that some people who need that energy, that healing energy, will possibly hesitate to move into a type of development that I'm looking at proposing. I know a lot of work has gone into it. I'd just like to ask you to consider that in every location. And another factor is pets. Not only dogs, but some of our unsheltered residents have cats. So to accommodate lifestyle, whatever is healing and helpful, providing housing, but also these additional life supportive elements, I think would be something we really would benefit from doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next speaker is Bev at Protect Wild Petaluma. So Bev, you may unmute and begin your comments.
Hi, thank you all for doing this. This is amazing. And I like the choices of hiring people at a decent wage and building with materials that will last a long time. I had a few suggestions. One is I thought the design was really plain, and I know adding anything to it, making it beautiful is probably going to add cost to it, but it did seem a little sterile to me. I noticed that on the picture of the inside, there seemed to be two tables. One looked like a desk that was under the loft bed, and the other was a table, that was off to the side. And I thought that maybe the space of one of those tables could have a toilet and a sink instead. So people would not have to go outside to use the facilities. Another thing that could be done is there's such a thing as an induction hot plate, and it would make it possible for people to warm up something, to make some soup, or give them more of a feeling of being at home. I think it would also be cool if they put in skylights and maybe provided the electricity through a solar panel that was on that roof. Also, I'd like to see trees in that area, both in the parking lot and where the homes are, for shade and to make life a lot more pleasant. Both shade trees and fruit trees, and also a community garden as a way for people to get together and work together and have fresh food. And I think that's all of it that I got. So thank you for listening, and just keep on keeping on. Okay, good night.
Thank you, Bev. And that is the last hand raised, so I'll turn it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And with that, I'll close public comment on this item and bring it back to the council. I see Karen has her hand up, so perhaps you want to respond to some of the public comment. Or you're on mute.
There you go. I did. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did want to reiterate that the plan that we presented tonight is a conceptual site plan, and the team will be thinking more about those community amenities, that services that clients would be able to use. So, gardening options, community areas where, people could gather. And I also wanted to comment that as part of this project, we are looking into solar options. So we still need to have some more research to do, but we are definitely considering solar options for energy for the project as needed. And those are my comments.
Thank you. And we'll go to the Vice Mayor, who has his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very excited to see that we're moving forward on this project, and been thinking a little bit about how to organize my thoughts, but here's how I'm going to lay it out. My concern with not having a kitchen is that one thing that often brings communities together is food, and cooking food for people is one really, really deeply personal way that people make connections. And if we don't give them that opportunity as a community, there's a lack of investment in it. And there's so much opportunity to give back when you're making food and preparing food and sharing a meal with people. And so I would really hope that we think about adding a kitchen that people can use to cook in, keep clean. I kind of liken this to a giant roommate situation and stuff. Pick up after themselves, and there's some shared house rules and things like that. And making meals and sharing space, that's what we're doing. I asked about the housing first because I'm not convinced that every single person needs to have their own bathroom and their own kitchen and everything. I really think that this is enough for a lot of people, and we spend a lot of money on plumbing and large plans and things like that, and that's not necessarily what everybody needs. And then when we start talking about climate change and the fact that the World Resources Institute says that if every person lived like the average American, like every single person on this screen, we need 5 Earths. And so do we want to be, is that the lifestyle that we want to create, or do we want to try and create a lifestyle that's way less resource intensive? And that's my thoughts on that. In terms of the volunteer participation, there's so much volunteer energy in this community, generally speaking, and around the homelessness, that I definitely support giving direction to work with the Rebuilding Together team to coordinate a volunteer-driven effort. People from Petaluma are going down to Mexico to build huts all the time, and we can have them build huts here, and I'd like to see us do that. And they're the perfect organization to do it. They have expertise. They've got a huge network of volunteers, and we've got a lot of Boy Scouts that need citizen, to earn their badges and things like that. This is a great way to give back and celebrate. And like, as excited as I am about this, I know that if Rebuilding Together had a volunteer-led effort, the grassroots energy that comes from building those huts spreads throughout the community. And when one neighbor says, "I can't believe that they did that," going back to like the community messaging, the way that the grassroots message spreads when your neighbor built that hut, you're way more accepting of it than thing got plopped down there and then you can complain. And so there's just so much to be said for welcoming volunteers. And so I don't know if the rest of the council is supportive of it, but I definitely would support the O'Brien proposal, Rebuilding Together, working together on something, and get started on it now, because I think we're totally on the right track. To the point of housing first, I think that we're agreeing to spend $700,000 on this and for 25 homes, and we know that's not even meeting our need. And so let's keep building housing. Let's keep building units. And I know we say the services are important, but if housing first is the point, let's just focus on building housing. And people will take care of each other. They're already doing it in so many ways. So that's my initial comments.
Thank you. Councilmember King, followed by Councilmember McDonald.
Yes, thank you. I'd again like to thank our staff and Karen Shimizu for the great report, very thorough and detailed. Appreciate that. And I do concur with regard to phase 2 that the city examine volunteer options as discussed earlier tonight, and I will move the item.
Okay, we do have a motion, and I will go on to Councilmember McDonald and keep going.
Thank you. I'll second that motion, and very enthusiastically. A couple comments. One of the things we noticed at the Los Gilicos site, though they're plain white boxes, they're allowed to be decorated by all of the residents in them. And so when you take a look at how they've done this, quite a unique art on the entryways and interiors. They're really personalized and whatnot. And I think that's a very good thing, except that the goal is to graduate. And I'm looking forward to what Petaluma's program will be, whether it's a 90-day residency to finding your footing to the next housing, 120, 180, whatever it takes. But what metrics will we use to help you get out of homelessness? And let's see, also at Los Gilicos, they use the spots between the huts for the resident parking. That's an opportunity to free up more land. But they've kind of looked at all of the input from the people there. And so I think they're a great resource. I'm glad staff is chatting with them. And then as we get to housing first as a concept, it's a shelter concept. And before the concept was meet the test for housing. And the paradigm shift was there is no test for housing. If we have a shelter, you're allowed in. That's how housing first. So it was to remove barriers to get people into a building where they could access the services they so vastly need. And I think we have to remember that we're talking about our goal being eliminating homelessness. That There's people are homeless, especially the chronic homeless, that after a year, that's the definition, after a year of being on the streets, the burdens are huge. And though you may sit by the riverside, the odds of nature's healing outweighing the hurt in the soul is greater. It's the recovery from chronicness requires massive intervention, and only then do things heal. So I'm super excited about this, and I'm glad we're doing this. And I do see that there's a next phase needed, and I support that exploring the Anthony O'Brien rebuilding proposal. But we have to remember that this is only one of the paths that we'll need to be taking. And I hope that people are just as enthusiastic when there's a home key project in their neighborhood. And we just saw in Rohnert Park where they proposed converting a closed school, and people came out of the woodwork. We want to make sure that all of our hearts in the right places tonight are still in the right place when it's a different and tougher decision for the next component of homelessness. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Ely, followed by Councilmember Kosike.
Thank you. I believe you called it, you kind of warbled there for a second. Okay, thank you. I won't repeat that. I agree with a lot of what other council members have said. And I just had one final question for staff, and that is, will the residents at this village be able to eat meals at Mary Isaac in their kitchen?
Yes, they will be able to eat meals there.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Councilmember Kosike, followed by Vice Mayor. Oh, hold on one second, Councilmember Kosike. I see the attorney has his hand up. Did you? No? Okay, sorry. Okay, Councilmember Kosike, followed by the Vice Mayor.
First question, does the motion at hand say anything about this phase 2 folks have been talking about? I'm not clear on that. No. Okay. Well, I'd like to offer a friendly amendment, if it's not too late, to somehow, without providing funding at this time, to give our approval to folks continuing to discuss the details of such a phase 2. Is that appropriate or not?
Well, now I do see our city attorney's hand up, so maybe I was just anticipating that. So
you must have been. You were channeling. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember, this is actually this is a great conversation, and it's helpful to staff to see where the council wants things to move beyond this action. But this is a very straightforward action that's been agendized, and it's just the purchase of the units.
Okay.
And nothing else has been given adequate Brown Act notice, and that's because of the pace at which things are moving that several people have commented on it. That's not to say that those other comments from the council are not helpful direction, but in terms of an action, that's what we're limited to tonight.
Okay. The only other thing I'd like to add is that I think there may be reason to not go too heavy on the amenities before people are there, but to let them to hear what they have to say about what they'd like to see there. That's it. Thanks.
thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I guess one of my thoughts just is maybe we can get an update on the status of conversations in the November meeting regarding phase 2. And then my question on this is, suppose people live in places like this, are they still homeless?
Well, it's an interesting question. I think they actually have shelters, so I would not call them homeless. I think they have interim shelter, but they're not permanent, which is the ideal and the goal of this program. So what this is this is a stepping stone between starting with, living in an encampment or living in your automobile to living in a housing type shelter as an interim solution. And then the goal would be to move into a more permanent housing situation. And I think Kevin might want to comment on that as well.
I was just going to say, I think our liaison to the continuum of care may have the actual answer to that as well. Thank you.
Well, I in collaboration with Karen, the point in time count that is the official statistic and definition that goes to HUD and relates to the national concerns on it, whatnot. It defines sheltered and unsheltered. So when they do the point in time count, folks in the city-owned houses that that have homeless people, or the shelter, or in these new shelters, will all be counted as homeless, but counted in a category called sheltered, as opposed to unsheltered homeless. And in Petaluma, in the last point in time count, it had about 135 unsheltered, 165 sheltered folks. And so both those numbers are counted and brought up through things. But as Karen points out, it's transition housing, it's interim housing. The goal is to come on a Section 8 voucher, and then they are no longer homeless when they are in that kind of housing situation.
Thank you. Go ahead, Vice Mayor. Did you have another?
Yeah, right. I guess I'm asking this because when I look at the home key application, it talks about shared housing, eligible cost, shared housing or scattered site housing is permitted as long as the resulting house has common ownership, financing, and property management, and each house signs a lease. So I'm just wondering, like, to me, like a community like this with a shared kitchen and a shared bathroom is, could be housing. And I guess I'm missing the point at which, like, is it like when you sign a lease for a site, when you become housed? And so, like I said, I'm skeptical that we can put up enough money and take up enough space to house everybody the way that we all live. And to the ability for us to create communities that are semi-self-reliant or self-reliant, that have shared facilities and shared amenities, it feels to me like it's a viable alternative, if not the preferred alternative, considering how much we all consume on a daily basis.
Thank you. And I'll ask Councilmember Fisher, did you want to weigh in on this?
This is really about buying 25 houses, and so I'm going to leave my comments to that and wait for the plan to come forward. And will it recommend this phase 2 and a campground and place for people to? I don't know. I'm not the expert, and so I'd wait for that information to come forward before really commenting on it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will just add my comments at the end here. I tend to agree with Councilmember Fisher that I'm totally in favor of this project and that this is what is in front of us. I think something that may not be clear to people is that the homes come empty. What goes in that home is dependent on what the person who is going to be the resident there brings. So an induction plate is absolutely something that someone could bring, a dorm refrigerator, as they used to be, if that's what they want, if that's where their priorities are, so they can cook and do that kind of self-care and feeding. That's their choice. But I do understand that having communal eating or the ability to eat together really is a nice and community building experience. So I really do agree with our Vice Mayor on that. But hopefully that can be worked out with the facilities that are already there, and for those people who want to bring them into their own units. I really am happy to see this transitional housing, and I don't think it will succeed if we do not have the wraparound services that go with it. It will not be able, there are many people who need a lot of help to get them onto that Section 8 voucher pathway and get them onto their own what I think we're providing right now. And it's a small step, it's an expensive step, but I think it's an essential first step for us. And I also love the idea, I think was Councilmember King, about free transit passes, and also the bikes space for everybody. Los Gillicos, everybody had a car supposedly. Well, we're not Los Guillicos. This is pretty close to downtown. It's pretty close to the train center. It's, it is close to the freeway if people do need a car to get to their work. But we do have options for people, and I want to hope that when we're building out how we're going to program this site, that we do involve the people who are going to be there, as Ms. Oakes mentioned from the public. And just, make it a Petaluma experience. So with that, I will end my comments and ask our city clerk to take a roll call vote.
Thank you. Barrett?
Yes.
Barnacle?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Healy?
Yes.
King?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Osake?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much, staff. Thank you, community. Thank you, everybody, for a really strong first step. And we're looking for what will be phase 2, but let's not get too much ahead of ourselves. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so now we're on to the public hearing. And item 6A is a public hearing on the engineer's report for proposed landscape and maintenance district 2021-1 for Oaks at Sunny Slope Landscape Assessment District, canvassing of ballots of owners of property within the boundaries of the proposed district, and consideration and possible adoption of resolution forming the landscape assessment district, ordering the improvements and confirming the diagram and assessment. And this will be Dylan Brady will be leading this discussion.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. And before we begin this discussion, would it be okay to go back to item 5A? Staff, I think, have addressed the Vice Mayor's concern.
Oh, okay. Yes, we can be flexible here. So we will not open the public hearing. We will go back to new business, and we will go back to item 5A. So Dylan, are you taking that?
Yes, if that's okay. Let me share my screen and hopefully everybody can see the proposed amendment here. So hopefully it made it a little more clear, satisfies the Vice Mayor's concern, and I can read this into the record if need be. So
I think for our people who cannot read that maybe from home or on their Zoom, you might want to read that into the record.
Sure, absolutely. And this is in the policy. It is page 8 of the staff report, and it is the second bullet point titled Tenants, Occupants in a Multi-Unit Complex Shared Through a Master Meter. And it states that they have the right to become customers of the city without being required to pay the amount due on the delinquent account, as long as they are willing to assume financial responsibility for subsequent charges for water to that customer's dwelling unit. If one or more of the multi-unit occupants are willing and able to assume responsibility for the subsequent charges for water service to their respective dwelling units to the satisfaction of the city, or if there's a physical means legally available to the city of selectively terminating service to those occupants who have not met the requirements for service, the city will make service available to the occupants who have met those requirements.
Okay, thank you for that. And I believe it was Vice Mayor Barnacle who brought up this issue. So does that wording make it clear in the way that you were looking for?
I'm not sure. So they can have the water turned on back to their unit, is what you're saying?
Correct.
But to turn the water back onto their unit, you'd have to turn it onto the whole facility.
Yeah, so we did speak to the finance director, and it would require a sub-meter. It currently has not happened in the city of Petaluma that this issue has come up, but it is potentially possible. So definitely want to reflect that here in case that occurs.
Gotcha. So so essentially what we would be doing is to put the water back on for that. The city would be installing a sub-meter and turning it back on for that customer's account.
Correct. Right now, it is impossible for the multi-units with a master meter to tell individually what the water consumption is per unit.
Got you. Can we put something in there about installing a sub-meter or something like that, just to make it clear?
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was hoping for, is that if we were going to be, if we're moving in that direction, if there's a negligent landlord, that the tenants can get the water back on and not be paying more than their share, or less than their share for that matter.
Okay, so let me call on Councilmember McDonald.
Yeah, I'm thoroughly confused now, the effectiveness of this as well. Just that, for example, you have a 50-unit apartment complex, and perhaps we need a building official to weigh in on this, but it's a single header of cold water running through, feeding down into each of the units, and a single hot water header coming off the boiler on the other side. You don't have a basement space to separate. You don't have an edge of property like PG&E does. So yeah, I'm not seeing how how this applies to both the 40 and 4 and 40 unit multi apartments equally. I'm not seeing this as taking care of it.
Oh, I see our city attorney has his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I don't think there's a perfect solution here. The wording that we, from the statute that we adjusted further, has some flexibility in it. And I think the reason it needs to have that is the reason that Councilmember McDonald just gave. If you look at that last phrase where it says, or if there's a physical means legally available to the city of selectively terminating service, which is a reference, I think, to the ability to do some kind of sub-metering. The phrase before that, where it says, if one or more of the multi-unit occupants are willing and able to assume responsibility for subsequent charges for water service to their respective dwelling units to the satisfaction of the city, for the or, I think that's intended to leave open, and that's right out of the statute, to leave open different ways for satisfying the city, so that the city is not in a position of being forced to continue to provide service for people who are refusing to pay for it, in order to also provide it for people who are willing to pay for it. And so I don't think we can prescribe that the city is going to install a sub-meter in circumstances where we won't be physically able to do that, because that will essentially force the city to continue to provide water for people who are refusing to pay for it. So this may be something that's too complicated to fix on the fly. We may need to return to the council for more discussion on that. I'm not sure if we're able to provide a more complete solution tonight, unless we have building staff who are on with an answer to that. But I think the issue that Councilmember McDonald has raised, it is one that may not be solvable in all cases.
Okay, so I see the Vice Mayor has his hand up and Councilmember McDonald. So go ahead.
Yep. I agree. We probably don't need to solve it tonight. My thoughts are, the only way that this would happen is if a landlord became negligent, is the only thing that I can think of, is if they just stop paying the water bill and then the city turns off the water to all the tenants. And like in this case, the tenants would not even get a notice probably. Like I don't even get a notice. I don't even know what I didn't know what my water usage was until the Argus did a PRA for it. So I think that the one way that we might be able to word this is maybe into some sort of a tenant protection or something, that, tenants are, if a landlord is paying the water bill and fails to do so, tenants don't have to pay their rent. I don't know, right? Like I'm just thinking, put some teeth into it so that if a landlord actually did want to go this route, that tenants can pay us instead of the landlord. Something like that, but you're right, there's no clean solution here. And the ultimate, this is where tenants' rights come in, right? This is, ultimately, are we going to, make sure that we're protecting tenants from these sort of horror stories? So
Thank you. And Councilmember McDonald, followed by Councilmember Healy.
Yeah, I concur with the vice mayor. I think that the language allows for several paths to success, but the worry is that there's no success, that you can't go forward on this. The landlord's not paying you, and you can't put a meter in. And I think the answer is you continue to provide water and perhaps have other remedy. Vice Mayor suggested one. Another one is lien the property. You can't shut off meter or water to people. That's wrong. Or not their fault. Thank you.
Councilmember Healy, followed by Councilmember Posake.
Thank you. So I think this revised language is as good as we're going to get tonight. And I'm going to move that revised language at this time. And if staff or other council members have improvements to this, I'm happy to consider those in the future. Thank you.
Is that a motion? Yes. Okay. So we have a motion, and we'll go to Councilmember Posake.
I'll second that motion. I think this is the best we can do, and I think we could consider doing some additional things as the vice mayor suggested in the future.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and I'm going to go to our Assistant City Attorney, Dylan Brady.
Thanks, Mayor. And just to reiterate, I spoke to our finance director. She said that this issue has not come up yet. Hopefully it doesn't. The amended language and the actual language in the policy does reflect the SB 998. Like Eric said, it does provide the city some flexibility here. I do think that for the vice mayor's concerns about the tenants not paying rent, that's probably already protected in just landlord habitability law. But something we can definitely come back to and try to think about here and try to solve.
Okay, I think we still have to open public comment, but I do want to hear from Councilmember Fisher.
I just want to clarify that what we're approving tonight is language that we needed in order to be compliant with SB 998, right? So that's really what's before us. And that I think as a rule, we will do everything we can not to shut off someone's water. And I think that's probably what we do now. So just to clarify that we're not setting up new rules to shut off water, that we're just revising the language to meet the state requirements.
Correct, Councilmember Fisher. As well, the SB 998 policy does require the city to definitely make a good faith effort to those tenants where the landlord is not paying to let them know that about the situation. So hopefully that addresses some of the concerns as well. But yes, this is entirely to comply with the state law that we need a written policy to match these language.
Thank you very much. And somebody's hand just went down. Okay. So with that, it was Patrick. So I will ask our city clerk if she has received any public comment on this item.
Madam Mayor, no public comments received on item 5A.
Thank you. So now I will ask our moderator to see if there's anybody in the audience, Zoom audience, who would like to speak to this item, and we will open public comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At this point, if you'd like to speak on this item, can you please raise your virtual hand? And Madam Mayor, there are no hands raised.
So with that, we'll close public comment, and we have a motion by Healy and a second by Posake, and we'll have a roll call vote.
Barrett?
Yes.
Barnacle?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Healy?
Yes.
King?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Posake?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, and thank you, staff, for working on that so quickly. Now we're back to opening the public hearing, and I already read the public hearing is for the Oaks at Sunny Slope Landscape Assessment District. So we will hear from Dylan again.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and Council. The developers here, I see him in the attendees, as well as Gina Benedetti Petnick and Cindy Chong to answer any questions you may have. But real briefly, the Oakside Sunny Slope is an 18 parcel subdivision on the southern end of Sunny Slope Road. During the entitlement process, it was conditioned that an assessment district would be established to fund the maintenance of public landscaping areas as well as stormwater improvements for the subdivision. We are here tonight just for the landscape assessment district. Those conditioned landscape services included landscaping plants, replacement plantings, tree trimmings as necessary, operation, maintenance, and repair, replacement of the irrigation system, mowing, vegetation, weed removal, pest control, and also the periodic litter removal, vandalism repair, periodic mulch replenishment. The developer was emailed a copy of last week's resolution implementing stage 4 of the water shortage contingency plan. So they are aware about the prohibition on planting new landscape and the limits on irrigating already existing landscape. So back in August 2nd, 2021, City Council passed 2 resolutions. The first resolution for this item was initiated proceedings for the landscape assessment district, as well as to prepare an engineer's report. That engineer's report is attached to the staff report. And then the second resolution back on August 2nd was setting the preliminary hearing date and preliminary approving that engineer's report. So accordingly, staff and the city clerk, they mailed the ballots. The ballots are in compliance with Prop 218, as well as the Landscape Lighting Act. In that second resolution, I should also say, set the public hearing tonight. So the 18 property owners were mailed the ballots. They were provided links to the staff report and the engineer's report. So tonight is really, we are asking you to hold the public hearing, have the discussion, and then canvass and tally these votes and the ballots. So how the ballots will kind of work in the voting is staff will publicly count the ballots to determine if a majority protest exists. A majority protest exists if the ballots opposed to the formation outweigh the ballots in favor. So in the engineer's report, it is shown that each property owner is entitled to 1/18 of the vote. So that means if there's a majority that oppose the formation, that vote for it, then the hearing or the landscape assessment district will not go forward. So for example, if there are 5 votes in favor and 5 votes opposed, then there is not a majority protest. So you do need more against opposed than in favor. So that is, oh, and I will say too that the assessments will be for next year, and they typically are around June and July. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions staff may have or council may have.
Thank you. And I have one hand up by Councilmember Fisher.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that, Dylan. I'm trying to reconcile what's in the engineer's report. There were 3 maps about the LAD maintenance areas versus what is in our staff report. It appears as though there's a trail at the top of the property that's not included in the maintenance area. And so I'm wanting to know why that discrepancy.
Sure, that is correct. And Eric, feel free to answer this one too. But after reviewing the engineer's report and the actual entitlement hearings and the conditions, the maintenance trail is not supposed to be included in the landscape assessment district, and something that the developer needs to figure out how to pay for, but should not be a burdensome to the property owners.
And so what is that? Is that a public trail or is it, what is that?
That's correct, Dylan, and it's a trail that's it's available to the public. It's because it's landlocked. It's mostly of value to the residents, but it was thought that it's in some future point, if adjoining property or right of way across it is acquired, that it could become more of a through trail. In which case, it would become, acquire greater public benefit, which obviously was the hope. But it was very clear in the record then that the decision makers, the council, determined that because that was of a more general benefit nature, it should not be allocated to the property owners through the assessment. And so we've discussed that with the applicant, and they know that they'll need to basically secure future maintenance funding for that themselves. And that's not obviously a staff determination. That's how the project, the entitlements were conditioned by the council previously. So thanks for teeing that up, Dylan.
Thank you.
So I'd like to follow up on Councilmember Fisher's question because I was part of the council at the time that made that decision. It was the hope at that time that this would be part of a west side urban separator public pathway, something we were not successful getting on the project, the adjoining project, which I would call to the north, but you know, in Petaluma it's hard to say, but going towards Sunny Slope and Sunny Slope. And this did catch my eye on page 6, I think it is, of that the funding, the trail maintenance will be a continuing obligation of the developer. Is that something that will be established with an actual fund prior to the certification that this project is completed, or how? I mean, I really do worry about whether or not this will actually be a funded maintenance group.
They will need to address it, Madam Mayor, and they will all, because the Landscape and Lighting Assessment District Act cannot fund subsurface drainage improvements such as the project also requires, and that will require separate district formation.
Okay, I just want to make sure that this doesn't fall off our radar, because I remember being burnt by Basin Street when they set up a funding mechanism that had no funding in it, because of how things were worded. So I just that never leaves my mind when I'm in discussions like this. So
well, that's great, and that's just you know, a good example of the council members exercising their oversight function. So I'm not trying to dismiss that, the importance of that at all. And I think when we come back with that other action, that will be another good time for the council to seek confirmation from staff and the applicant as to precisely how that's going to be implemented.
Thank you.
Such as through it probably will need to have an endowment or something similar.
Okay, so I'm not seeing any other council members with questions, and I would ask our city clerk to see if there were any comments on this item.
Madam Mayor, we did not receive any public comments prior to the meeting.
Thank you. And so I will ask our moderator we can open the public hearing and see if there's anyone in the Zoom audience who would like to speak to this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the public wishing to speak on this public hearing item, please raise your hand and you'll be called on in turn. You'll have 3 minutes in which to give your comments. I'm looking to the 14 that we have left, and I do not see any hands raised, so I'll turn it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so with that, we will close the public hearing. And now I think, Eric, do you want to take the discussion from here?
I'll be happy to, Madam Mayor. And now that the hearing's closed, Dylan, I believe, is going to retrieve the ballot box and see if there are any subsequent ballots in that for canvassing. As Dylan already explained, the canvassing process is intended to satisfy Prop 218 requirements and determine whether a majority protest exists, which if it does, it will prevent the council from forming the district. If it does not, the council will be free to proceed. Dylan also mentioned the weighting is equal. It's the same allocation per parcel. And the study that's been prepared supports that as being a 218 Prop 218 compliant apportionment of the cost of this special benefits resulting from the assessment. So, as Dylan mentioned, I believe once he returns with that, I think Patrick's going. Are you going to share the screen, Patrick, with the tabulation, and we'll in real time input the voting, and then our city clerk will declare the result, and then I'll indicate, confirm what that means in terms of proceeding with the action. So I think.
So now we turn it over to the clerk?
Well, yes, and Patrick, I think, to share a screen, and then we'll start populating it with the results of the ballots, which have been sealed until now because they're confidential. I'm sorry, Councilmember Posake seems to have a question.
Oh, thanks. Are all these lots sold yet or?
No, our understanding
Does the developer get the votes on the one they still own?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
This is late in the process. Usually the process is timed so the developer clearly controls the vote, and that's
I see.
not completely the case here. Thank you. So Patrick, I think it's.
I'll share my screen and we'll go through the vote with the clerk's office.
Patrick, you're able to close the document recovery so it gets a little bigger so people can see.
Zoom in a little bit. All right, is that better?
Yep, and then if you just scroll up there, you go to the left. I'll read off each one, starting with the APN numbers. You can find it. So, I'll say there's a typo in line 9 there. It should be 850. The first one here is for APN 019-850-014-000. This should be line 15 for 14 Oak Mills Court.
Is it 014?
Yes.
14 Oak. All right, is the ballot signed?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and did they check one of the boxes either in favor or opposed to the assessment? And if so, what did they check?
They checked the box in favor.
So we'll record that as a yes.
You're on line 15, Patrick, instead of 14.
He's on the correct line.
Oh, okay.
APN 019-850-014. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, we'll move on to the next.
Next one. APN 019-850-016-000. 6 Oak Knoll Court.
Okay, is the ballot signed?
Yes, it is.
And did they check one box either in
Yes.
favor or opposed?
They checked the box, no, I am opposed.
Recorded that. We'll move on to the next ballot.
APN 019-850-015-000 for 10 Oak Knoll Court.
Okay, is the ballot signed?
Yes, it is.
And what did they vote?
They checked the box for no, I am opposed.
Recorded. We'll move on to the next.
APN 019-850-010-000 for 27 Oak Knoll Court.
Okay, is the ballot signed?
It is signed.
And what did they check?
The box, yes, I am in favor.
Okay, that vote has been recorded. Next one.
APN 019-850-002-000 for 3 Oak Knoll Court.
Okay, is the ballot signed?
Yes, it is.
And what did they check?
No, I am opposed.
That vote has been recorded. We'll move on to the next.
APN 019-850-005-000 for 7 Oak Knoll Court.
Okay, is the ballot signed?
Yes, it is.
And what did they check?
They checked the box for no, I am opposed.
Okay, that has been recorded. We'll move on to the next.
APN 019 excuse me, 850-004-000 for 2 Oak Knoll Court.
Is the ballot signed?
Yes, it is.
And what did they check?
They checked the box no, I am opposed.
Understood. Vote recorded. We'll move on to the next.
APN 019-850-006-000 for 11 Oak Knoll Court.
Is the ballot signed?
Yes, it is.
And what did they check?
They checked the box, no, I am opposed.
That vote has been recorded. We'll move on to the next.
APN 019-850-009-000 for 23 Oak Knoll Court.
Is the ballot signed?
Yes, it is.
And what did they vote?
They checked the box for yes, I am in favor.
Okay, that vote's been recorded. We'll move on to the next.
APN 019-850-011-000 for 30 Oak Knoll Court.
Is the ballot signed?
Yes, it is.
And which box was checked?
Yes, I am in favor.
That vote has been recorded.
The next one is 019-850-012-000 for 22 Oak Knoll Court.
Okay, is the ballot signed?
Yes, it is.
And what was checked in there?
They checked the box for yes, I am in favor.
That vote has been recorded. We'll move on to the next.
APN 019-850-008-000 for 19 Oak Knoll Court.
Is the ballot signed?
Yes, it is.
And what was checked on that?
They checked the box, yes, I am in favor.
Okay, that vote has been recorded.
APN 019-850-001-000 for 690 Sunny Slope Road.
Is the ballot signed?
Yes, it is.
And what was the check on that
They
ballot?
checked the box for yes, I am in favor.
Okay, that vote has been recorded.
APN 019-850-007-000
Is the ballot signed?
15 Oak Knoll Court. Yes, it is signed.
Thank you. And what was checked on that?
They checked the box for yes, I am in favor.
That vote has been recorded.
APN 019-850-013-000 for 18 Oak Knoll Court.
Was the ballot signed?
Yes, it is.
And what was checked on there?
Check the box for yes, I am in favor.
Okay, that vote has been recorded.
And APN 019-850-018-000 for 674 Sunny Slope Road.
And was the ballot signed?
Yes, it is.
And what was the vote?
They checked the box for yes, I am in favor. That concludes the ballots that were received by mail before the public hearing.
And there are no ballots in the ballot box.
Okay, and that concludes the canvassing of the ballots. And looking, it looks like the total yes percentage is 62.5%. No votes, 37.5%. So there is not a majority protest.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and thanks, Patrick and Dylan. So that confirms that there is not a majority protest under Prop 218, and that the council is free to proceed with formation of the district in accordance with this agenda item, and be happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for taking care of all that process. That was good teamwork. So we now have a resolution, a motion is needed. So would someone like to make, Council Member Healy?
So I'd be happy to make the motion, and then just some free advice to the developer. They better move forward with the second assessment district before they sell any more of these homes, because they have some unhappy homeowners up there.
Okay, so there's a motion and some advice. Is there a second?
I'll second his motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Healy and a second by Fisher, and we will have a roll call vote.
Barrett,
Yes.
Barnacle,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Osake.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. And now we're on to our final item and in the public hearing, and that is adoption of a resolution approving the City of Petaluma's 5-year permanent local housing allocation plan and authorizing the city manager and assigned staff to submit an application to the State of California Department of Housing and Community Development. And that will be our assistant city manager starting this off, or is it going to Karen?
I think we'll go right to Karen. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. Patrick, can you help me out here and pull up the presentation for me?
I can do that, but the file sent looks like it's speaker slides. So let me know if this is not the right one.
Nope, that's right.
Hey, Patrick, I got it.
Okay.
I have notes. I mean, I could actually probably do this without a presentation. Okay, so good evening, members of the council, Madam Mayor, and the public. I'm here this evening to talk about the Permanent Local Housing Allocation Plan. It is a new funding source that is available through the Department of Housing and Community Development. And the next slide. What we will be talking tonight is we will be holding a public hearing to receive comments on this plan. We'll give, I'm going to give a quick overview of the program, the available funding and eligible activities, and the staff recommendations. And then I'm here to answer any comments, questions, and take recommendations. Next slide. So the program, as I stated, this is actually a new program that was created by HCD in 2017 by Senate Bill 2. It's part of the Building Homes and Jobs Act. The program is funded on real estate fees, on a fee based on real estate transaction. That's the source. And so the program, the amount available for funding can fluctuate through the years based on real estate transaction activity. The program itself is modeled after the CDBG, which is a federal program. So it is modeled after as an entitlement program modeled after the federal program. What we have before you this evening is this is the initial 5-year plan that we're presenting. So this is for the period of 2019 to 2023. We'll be reviewing the plan, and then we will be submitting that to HCD for final approval. There's about a 90-day approval process on it. Next slide. So the available funding, or the estimated funding over those 5 years, is $1.1 million. The uses, it can be used for rental housing development, acquisition, rehab, and preservation of existing houses. Can also be used as a capital reserve for services for permanent supportive housing development, such as a project home key. This funding could be used to support. Can also be used for homeless services, for at-risk or people experiencing homelessness, rapid rehousing, and navigation centers. It's a very flexible funding source that we have in front of us. We can also use it as well for home ownership opportunities. The one aspect of this program is that it does qualify to be used as matching funds for a local housing trust fund. That is an item that staff had planned to bring forward to council, I believe earlier in September. And that has been scheduled to bring forward to council for consideration, establishing a local housing trust fund in November. Within this program, you can serve households up to 120% of AMI. I just wanted to kind of quickly go over the AMI. So if we take a look at the area median income for a family of 4, households at 30% earn $34,100 a year, 50% is $56,800, and people at 80% is $90,900. So that gives you an idea of the households that we would be serving. Next slide. So the staff recommendation on this, and I want to highlight, this is a recommendation of the initial plan. It would be submitted to HCD for approval. That'll be about 90 days. So based on the schedule, the city could have access to this funding after the first of the year to be used for projects. The funding itself would be brought forward similar to the CDBG funding, where projects would be brought to council for consideration of funding. So the plan itself is really highlighting the preference of the project serving households at 60% of AMI, but we could allow and use the funding to serve households up to 120% AMI. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and I can answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And are there any questions? Oh, I see Councilmember Fisher.
It's not a question. I just, that line about having a preference of serving people 60% of AMI, I want to really stress that, that we really want to be serving our very low and low income residents, and that moderate, not so much my preference. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Healy?
So I'll support the staff recommendation. I would just note that the amount of funding we're getting for this is just minuscule compared to the need, but it's what we do, and it's what the state allows us to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I don't see any other comments or questions for staff, so I will ask our city clerk if she has received any comments on this item.
Madam Mayor, we did not receive any comments prior to the meeting.
Thank you. And I will ask Patrick, we will open the public hearing and see if there's anyone in the public on Zoom who would like to speak to this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the public wishing to speak in this public hearing item, please raise your hand and you'll be called on in turn. I'm looking to the audience and I do not see any hands raised, so I'll turn it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. With that, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the council, and call on Councilmember Fisher.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and move approval of the item, please.
Thank you, and then I'll call on Councilmember King.
Yeah, I'll second it and also concur with the comments of Councilmember Fisher and Healy.
Okay, so we have a motion by Fisher and a second by King, and we will take the roll call vote.
Barrett?
Yes.
Barnacle?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Healy?
Yes.
King?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Osake?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. And with that, we are done with tonight's meeting at a reasonable hour. So thank you, staff, thank you, community, and thank you, council members. So
You started early.
at 5
That's all.
o'clock,
Good night.
5 o'clock next Friday, next Monday for our special meeting. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Right.